Do not trust your son. Pretend you are sick and get off the plane right now. Those were the words the flight attendant whispered to me as she leaned over to check my seatbelt. I thought it was a cruel joke. My son Marcus and his wife Vanessa were sitting right next to me, smiling like they had just won the lottery. We were on a private jet heading to Mexico for what they called a tropical paradise retirement. But when the flight attendant came back, her eyes wide with terror, and begged me again, I knew. This wasn't a vacation. It was a one-way trip to a grave. 25 minutes later, the plane was grounded, and I was in an ambulance watching my son curse, not because I was dying, but because his plan was ruined. Before I tell you how I escaped a murder plot orchestrated by my own flesh and blood, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that family isn't always about blood, it is about loyalty. The cabin of the Gulfstream G650 smelled of rich leather and expensive champagne. It was a smell I knew well. 30 years ago, as the head of security for the Olympus Casino in Las Vegas, I had flown on jets like this with high rollers and mafia dons. I knew the scent of power, and I knew the scent of a hustle. But today, I wasn't the security chief. I was just Otis Jefferson, a 76-year-old man recovering from a stroke that had left my left side weak and my speech a little slurred, or so they thought. My son Marcus sat across the aisle swirling a glass of scotch. He was 40 years old, but he still looked like the boy who used to steal $20 bills from my wallet. He wore a suit that was too tight and a watch that was too big. Next to him was Vanessa, his wife. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving with a manic speed. She was a pharmacist, cold, clinical, and calculating. She had never liked me. But suddenly, 3 weeks ago, she had become the doting daughter-in-law, insisting that the dry desert air of Las Vegas wasn't good for my recovery. She had found a specialized facility in Mexico. Paradise, she called it. "Dad, are you comfortable?" Marcus asked, his voice dripping with fake concern. "Do you need a pillow?" "I am fine," I mumbled, letting my head loll to the side. I played the part. The confused old man, the burden. "Good," he said, turning back to his drink. "Just relax. It is a long flight." He got up to use the restroom. Vanessa didn't even look up from her phone. She was typing furiously, a small smile playing on her lips. That was when the flight attendant approached. Her name tag said Sarah. She was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes that looked familiar. She leaned over ostensibly to check my seatbelt, but her hand lingered on my arm. Her grip was tight, urgent. "Mr. Jefferson," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "Do you remember Mike?" "You?" "Mike, the pit boss from the Mirage." I blinked. Mike. Big Mike. He had died 10 years ago, but I had paid for his daughter's college tuition after he passed. "I am his daughter, Sarah," she said, her eyes darting toward the restroom door where Marcus had disappeared. "You helped me. Now I have to help you." She leaned closer, her breath warm against my ear. "They aren't taking you to a resort, Mr. Jefferson. I heard them talking in the galley before you boarded. They were laughing about the insurance policy. They said the facility in Mexico doesn't have a phone. They said—" She paused, her voice trembling. "They said you aren't coming back. Your ticket is one way, sir." My heart slammed against my ribs. "One way. You have to get off this plane," she hissed. "Right now, before the doors close. Pretend you are sick. Have a heart attack. Anything. Just get off." She stood up quickly, smoothing her skirt as the bathroom door opened. Marcus walked back out, adjusting his tie. "Everything okay here?" he asked, looking at Sarah with suspicion. "Just checking the passengers, sir." Sarah said, her voice professional and calm. "We are cleared for takeoff in 10 minutes. She walked away, but she looked back at me one last time. Her eyes were pleading. "Please." I looked out the window. The tarmac was heat-hazy in the Vegas sun. I looked at Vanessa. She was still texting. I saw the reflection of her screen in the window. She was texting a contact named Dr. M. The message read, "Package is secured. ETA 4 hours. Prepare the room. Package." I was the package. I looked at Marcus, my son, the boy I had taught to fish, the boy I had bailed out of debt 3 times. He was smiling at his reflection in the glass, admiring his own jawline. He wasn't thinking about my health. He was thinking about my money, my life insurance, my estate. The rage started in my gut, hot and sharp. It burned away the fog of the stroke. It burned away the weakness. But I couldn't show it. Not yet. I was on their turf. I was trapped in a metal tube with 2 people who wanted me dead. I had to act. I grabbed my chest. I let out a groan, a low, guttural sound of pain. I convulsed in my seat, my weak left arm flailing and knocking my water glass onto the floor. Dad Marcus said, looking annoyed, "What are you doing? You are making a mess." My chest, I gasped, squeezing my eyes shut. "It hurts. I can't breathe." Vanessa looked up. She didn't look worried. She looked calculated. She looked at her watch. "It is probably just anxiety," she said dismissively. "Give him a sedative, Marcus. He is just scared of flying." "No," I shouted, forcing the air out of my lungs. My heart, "Help me!" I slumped forward, my head hitting the tray table. I let my body go limp, dead weight. Sarah came running back. She knew the cue. "Medical emergency," she shouted, her voice ringing through the cabin. "Captain, we have a medical emergency. Passenger in 2A is unresponsive." She grabbed the intercom. "Stop the plane," she ordered. "We need paramedics now." Marcus stood up. "No, wait. He is fine. He does this sometimes. We have to go. We have an appointment in Mexico." "Sir, he is not breathing properly," Sarah yelled, checking my pulse. "I am trained in first aid. This is a code blue. We are not taking off." The engines, which had started to whine, spooled down. The plane lurched to a halt. "Damn it," Marcus hissed, slamming his hand against the overhead bin. "Damn it, Dad. You are ruining everything." He wasn't scared for me. He was angry. He was inconvenienced. Vanessa stood up, her face pale. "Marcus, we can't stop. The transfer, the window." "Shut up," Marcus snapped at her. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are returning to the gate. Paramedics are on the way." I lay there, eyes closed, listening to my son curse my existence. I felt Sarah's hand on my shoulder squeezing gently. A signal. You did it. But I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the opening move. I had gotten off the plane, but now I had to survive the ambulance ride with the man who wanted to kill me. I let out another moan, a sound of pure agony. "Hang on, Mr. Jefferson," Sarah whispered. "Help is coming." But I knew the real help wasn't the paramedics. The real help was the anger burning inside me. The Otis Jefferson they thought was dead was about to wake up, and he was going to burn their world to the ground. The paramedics worked with a chaotic efficiency that felt almost violent against the luxurious silence of the private jet. I lay limp on the stretcher, my eyes fluttering open just enough to maintain the charade of a dying man, but wide enough to see the fury etched into my son's face. He wasn't looking at me with concern or fear. He was looking at his watch. He was looking at the exit door of the plane as if calculating how much money was bleeding out of his bank account with every second we stayed on the tarmac. I groaned a low, guttural sound that rattled in my chest. It was a performance I had perfected years ago to get out of boring board meetings, but today it was a survival tactic. The oxygen mask was pressed over my face, smelling of plastic and sterile air, but it couldn't block out the scent of Vanessa's expensive perfume as she leaned over me not to comfort me, but to hiss at the medical team. "Be careful with his suit," she snapped, her voice sharp and brittle like breaking glass. "That is a custom silk blend. Do not cut it open unless he is actually dying." "Ma'am, please step back," the lead paramedic said firmly, pushing her aside as they lifted the stretcher. "We need to stabilize him. His heart rate is erratic." It was erratic because I was furious, not because I was failing. I was 76 years old, and I had faced down mob bosses in the back rooms of casinos who had more honor than the woman standing over me. As they wheeled me down the narrow aisle of the jet, I caught the eye of Sarah, the flight attendant. She stood by the cockpit door, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She didn't smile. She gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was a warrior's salute. She had handed me a weapon, and now it was up to me to use it. We hit the cold air of the jetway, and the shock of it made me shiver for real. The transition from the climate-controlled cabin to the harsh reality of the ambulance waiting below felt like a metaphor for my entire life right now. I was being dragged out of the comfort I had paid for and thrown into the chaos of survival. Marcus and Vanessa followed close behind, their footsteps heavy and angry on the metal stairs. I could hear them arguing in hushed, frantic whispers. "This is a disaster," Vanessa hissed. "A complete, unmitigated disaster. Do you know how much it cost to charter this flight? We are not getting a refund, Marcus." "I don't care about the refund," Marcus shot back, though his voice lacked conviction. "I care about the timeline. If we miss the window..." They stopped talking as the paramedics loaded me into the back of the waiting ambulance. The siren wasn't on yet, but the lights were flashing, painting the tarmac in pulses of red and white. I lay there, eyes closed, regulating my breathing, listening with every ounce of training I had from my days in security. People always assume the old and the sick are deaf. They assume that because your body is failing, your ears have stopped working. It is a fatal mistake. The paramedic stepped away for a moment to grab a portable monitor, giving my son and his wife a brief window of privacy right outside the open doors of the ambulance. They thought I was unconscious. They thought I was a vegetable. Vanessa grabbed Marcus by the lapels of his jacket. I opened my eyes a fraction of an inch, just enough to see her face. It was twisted into a mask of pure, venomous greed. "Listen to me," she risked her voice low and dangerous. "You have to handle this. You have to get him back on a plane today." "He just had a heart attack," Vanessa Marcus whispered, looking around nervously. "They are going to admit him. Then you get him discharged," she said. "You are his power of attorney, Marcus. You sign the papers. You tell them he has a specialist in Mexico waiting for him. I don't care what you have to lie about. We have a deadline." She pulled him closer, her fingernails digging into the fabric of his suit. "The transfer papers for the villa and the offshore accounts only have a 48-hour window," she said. "The notary in Tijuana is paid off, but he won't wait forever. And the travel insurance policy, the one with the accidental death rider, it is only valid if the incident happens outside of U.S. borders." My blood ran cold. Accidental death rider. It wasn't just about dumping me in a nursing home, it was about an accident. A slip in the shower, a fall from a balcony. They were planning to kill me. They were going to fly me to Mexico, strip me of my assets, and then arrange a tragic accident to collect a double payout if he doesn't disappear down there. Vanessa continued, her voice shaking with intensity. "We get nothing. We get the debt. We get the foreclosure. We get prison, Marcus. Do you understand?" I understood. I understood everything. My son wasn't just a failure. He was a co-conspirator in my murder. But Marcus hesitated. I saw him look at me lying helpless on the stretcher. For a second, just a fleeting second, I thought I saw a glimmer of hesitation. Maybe a spark of the boy I had raised. Maybe he would say no. Maybe he would say that money wasn't worth his father's life. Then he looked at his phone. He looked at a notification on the screen, probably a debt collector or a bank alert. The hesitation vanished. His face hardened. "I can't leave him here alone," he said. "It looks suspicious if we both fly out while he's in the hospital." "Fine," Vanessa said, stepping back and smoothing her dress. "I will go. I will fly down and secure the notary. I will prep the facility. You ride with him to the hospital. Get him stabilized, get him discharged, and put him on the next commercial flight to Tijuana. Do not let them run tests. Do not let them keep him overnight. Just get him to me." She looked at me one last time. There was no love in that look. There was only calculation. She was looking at a package that had been delayed in shipping. "Don't mess this up, Marcus," she warned. "Our lives depend on it." She turned on her heel and walked back toward the stairs of the private jet. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye. She marched back to her champagne and her leather seats, leaving her husband to dispose of his father. Marcus watched her go. He ran a hand over his face, wiping away the sweat. He looked stressed, he looked tired, but he didn't look sad. He looked like a man dealing with a flat tire on the way to a meeting. The paramedics jumped back into the ambulance. "Sir, are you coming?" one of them asked Marcus. "Yeah," Marcus grunted. "I am coming." He climbed in and sat on the bench opposite the stretcher. The doors slammed shut, sealing us in. The engine roared to life, and the siren began to wail, a mournful sound that echoed the screaming in my own head. I watched him through the slits of my eyes. He was sitting 3 feet away from me. I was supposed to be dying. I was supposed to be his father, the man who had taught him how to throw a baseball, the man who had paid for his college, the man who had buried his mother with him just a year ago. A normal son would be holding my hand. A normal son would be asking the paramedics questions. A normal son would be praying. Marcus pulled out his phone. He didn't look at me. He didn't even glance at the heart monitor that was beeping a steady rhythm. He opened a gambling app. I saw the green and red flashes of the screen reflected in his glasses. He was checking the spread on a football game. He was betting. While I was dying. The paramedic, a young woman with kind eyes, adjusted my oxygen mask. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked gently. "Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." I squeezed her hand weakly. She smiled down at me. "You are going to be okay, Mr. Jefferson," she said. "We are taking you to St. Jude's. It is the best cardiac unit in the state." I wanted to tell her that I didn't need a cardiac unit. I needed a lawyer. I needed a gun. I needed to go back in time and raise a different son. Marcus looked up from his phone, annoyed by her voice. How long until we get there, he asked. About 15 minutes, the paramedic said. 15 minutes, Marcus muttered. Great. I am going to miss the kickoff. He went back to his phone. I lay there and I let the truth settle over me like a shroud. There was no coming back from this. There was no misunderstanding. There was no benefit of the doubt. My son had just agreed to ship me to a foreign country to be murdered for an insurance payout. He had chosen his wife's greed over my life. I felt a tear leak out of the corner of my eye. It slid down my temple and pooled in my ear, hot and stinging. The paramedic saw it. She wiped it away with her gloved thumb. It is okay to be scared, she whispered. We have got you. She thought I was crying because I was afraid of death. She was wrong. I wasn't afraid of dying. I had made my peace with God a long time ago. I was crying because I was mourning. I was mourning the death of my son. The Marcus I knew, the Marcus I loved, was gone. The man sitting across from me checking sports scores was a stranger, a monster wearing my son's face. And monsters don't get mercy. Monsters get put down. The ambulance hit a pothole and I groaned. Marcus sighed loudly, shifting in his seat. Can you keep it down, he said to no one in particular. I am trying to concentrate. That was the moment. That was the final nail in the coffin. The last shred of love I held for him withered and died right there in the back of that ambulance. I closed my eyes tight. I started to formulate a plan. I needed to get away from him. I needed to get to a phone. I needed to call Ray. Ray the Shark. My old friend. The best private investigator in Nevada. The man who knew where all the bodies were buried because he had helped dig a few of the holes. I had to get to the hospital. I had to get Marcus out of the room. And then I had to disappear. The siren wailed on. We were speeding toward the hospital, but in my mind I was already miles away. I was already plotting. I was already calculating the cost of this betrayal. Marcus thought he was taking me to a hospital to patch me up for the slaughter. He didn't know he was driving me to my war room. He wanted my money. He wanted my life. He was going to get neither. He was going to get a lesson in security. A lesson from the master. And class was about to begin. The sterile scent of the emergency room was usually a comfort to me, a reminder of order and procedure. But tonight, it smelled like a cage. I lay on the gurney, the thin hospital gown scratching against my skin, my chest heaving with a rhythm I was forcing my body to maintain. The monitors beeped a steady lie, simulating the distress of a dying man, while my mind raced with the cold clarity of a security chief handling a breach. My son Marcus stood in the corner of the small curtained cubicle. He wasn't holding my hand. He wasn't praying. He was tapping his foot, his eyes glued to his phone, his thumb scrolling through messages with a frantic, nervous energy. He looked like a man waiting for a bus, not a son watching his father fade. The curtain swished open and Dr. Harrison stepped in. I had known Harrison for 20 years. We played poker on Thursdays back when I could still hold cards without my hands shaking from rage. He looked at the clipboard, then at the monitors, then at me. He frowned. He was a good doctor. He knew what a heart attack looked like, and he knew what a performance looked like. He stepped closer, shining a pen light into my eyes. "Mr. Jefferson," he said. His voice professional but laced with confusion. "Your enzymes are normal. Your EKG is stable. I am not seeing the typical markers of a cardiac event." Marcus didn't even look up. "He is in pain, Doc." Marcus snapped his eyes, still on his screen. "Just give him something to knock him out. We have a flight to catch in the morning. He needs to sleep." Harrison looked at Marcus, then back at me. I saw the question in his eyes. I reached out and grabbed his wrist. My grip was hard, iron, hard, the grip of the man who used to throw cheaters out of the casino. I looked him dead in the eye and gave a single, imperceptible shake of my head. I put a finger to my lips. Harrison froze. He looked at my eyes. He saw the intelligence there, the desperation. He saw the old Otis. He understood. "I am going to order some more tests," Harrison said loudly, his voice pitching up for Marcus's benefit. "We need to keep him for observation. It could be a silent angina. I will be back in 10 minutes. He squeezed my hand once, a silent promise of alliance, and walked out. Marcus let out a groan of frustration. He shoved his phone into his pocket and glared at me. "Great," he muttered. "Just great. Tests. Observation. You are ruining everything, Dad. Do you know how much it costs to reschedule a medical transport? Do you even care?" I didn't answer. I let my eyes roll back slightly, feigning exhaustion. My phone rang. It wasn't my phone. It was Marcus's. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. His face went pale. He looked at me, then at the door. "I have to take this," he hissed. "Don't go anywhere." He stepped out of the cubicle. I waited 3 seconds. Then I sat up. The act was over. I slid off the gurney, my legs hitting the cold linoleum floor. I was still wearing my suit trousers and my dress shoes, having refused to let the nurses strip me completely. I grabbed my shirt and jacket from the chair where they had been tossed. I dressed with the speed of a man who had spent his life responding to alarms. My hands were steady. My heart was a block of ice. I could hear Marcus in the hallway just outside the curtain. His voice was a hushed panic. "I know I owe you the money, Tony," he was whispering. "I know. It is coming. The old man he is complicating things. He had an episode. No, he is not dead yet. If he dies here, the insurance is tricky. I need him in Mexico. I need 48 hours. Just give me 48 hours and you will have your $2 million. I froze, buttoning my shirt. $2 million. That was the price tag. My son had sold me for $2 million to a loan shark named Tony. He wasn't just broke, he was underwater and he was using my life as a snorkel. I sat down on the chair and lifted my left leg. I grabbed the heel of my dress shoe. It was a custom make-a-little trick I had learned from a magician in Vegas in the 80s. I twisted the heel to the right. It clicked and slid open, revealing a small hollowed-out compartment. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a tiny Nokia phone and a spare battery. I had carried this emergency line for 5 years, ever since Betty died, and I realized that without her, I was alone in a tank of sharks. I popped the battery in. The screen lit up a dull green. I didn't call the police. The police would take hours. They would ask questions. They would file reports. I didn't have time for bureaucracy. I needed a ghost. I dialed a number I had memorized a decade ago. It rang twice. "Yeah," a voice answered, gravelly and tired. "Ray," I said. "It is Otis." There was a pause, then the sound of a chair scraping against a floor. "Otis, you sound like you are in a hole." "I am in the ER at St. Jude's," I said, keeping my voice to a whisper. "Marcus just tried to ship me to Mexico on a one-way ticket. He owes $2 million to someone named Tony. He is planning an accident, Ray." I heard the sound of a lighter flicking on. "The kid finally broke bad, huh?" Ray said. "I told you he had weak eyes." "What do you need?" "I need a hole, Ray," I said. "A safe house, somewhere off the grid, somewhere he can't find me, and I need you to rip his life apart. I want his financials. I want his emails. I want to know who Tony is, and I want to know exactly how my son plans to kill me." "I am on it," Ray said. "Go to the service exit on 4th Street. There is a blue sedan parked there. Keys are under the mat. Drive to the old warehouse in the industrial district. You know the one." "I know it," I said. And Otis Ray added, "Watch your back. If he is desperate enough to owe Tony, he is desperate enough to do it himself right there in the hospital." I hung up and slid the phone back into my shoe, snapping the heel shut. I stood up. I put on my jacket. I looked at the empty gurney. I arranged the pillows under the blanket to look like a sleeping form. It wouldn't fool him for long, but it would buy me seconds. And seconds were all I had. I peeked through the curtain. Marcus was still on the phone, his back to me, pacing the hallway, running a hand through his hair. I turned the other way. I slipped out of the cubicle, moving silent as a shadow. I walked with a purpose, blending in with the chaos of the ER. I passed nurses rushing with clipboards. I passed a family crying in the waiting area. I kept my head down, my face hidden by my collar. I found the service corridor. It was marked authorized personnel only. I pushed through the doors. The air was cooler here, smelling of bleach and laundry. I walked faster, my cane clicking softly on the concrete. I found the exit door. I pushed the bar. The night air hit me like a physical blow, cold and sharp. It smelled of rain and exhaust. I was out. I moved quickly toward 4th Street, keeping to the shadows. I found the blue sedan. It was an old Ford, nondescript, invisible. I found the key. I got in. The engine roared to life. As I pulled away from the hospital, I looked up at the 4th floor windows. I wondered which one was mine. I wondered if Marcus was still standing there lying to a loan shark about the father he thought he controlled. Back in the hospital, Marcus hung up the phone. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. He composed his face into a mask of concern. He walked back into the cubicle, ready to play the grieving son for the doctor, ready to sign the discharge papers, ready to drag me to my doom. "Dad," he said, pulling back the curtain. "I fixed it. I got us a flight for—" He stopped. The bed was empty. The pillows were arranged in a lump, but the sheets were cold. "Dad," Marcus asked, looking around the small room. He looked in the bathroom. Empty. He looked under the bed. Empty. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. Not panic for my safety, panic for his plan, panic for the $2 million that had just walked out the door. He ran out into the hallway. He grabbed a passing nurse. "Where is he?" Marcus shouted, shaking her. "Where is my father?" The man in bed 4. The nurse pulled away, terrified. "I don't know, sir. He was there 5 minutes ago." "He can't walk." Marcus screamed, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "He had a stroke. He is a cripple. Someone took him." He ran to the nurse's station. He slammed his hand on the counter. "Lock down the hospital," he yelled. "My father has been abducted. He is confused. He is rich. Someone took him." Dr. Harrison stepped out of an office. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the empty room. Mr. Jefferson Harrison said calmly, "We didn't release him. If he is gone, he left AMA, against medical advice." "He didn't leave," Marcus shrieked. "He can't leave. He doesn't have his wallet. He doesn't have his phone. I took them." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "You took his phone." For safekeeping, Marcus stammered, realizing his mistake. He loses things. Marcus pulled out his own phone. He didn't call 911. He didn't call security. He dialed a number he knew by heart. Vanessa picked up on the first ring. She was already in Mexico, waiting at the villa, prepping the kill floor. "Did you land?" she asked. "Is he with you?" "He is gone," Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. "What do you mean, gone?" Vanessa asked, her tone turning to ice. "He ran away," Marcus said. "He escaped. I turned my back for 2 minutes and he vanished." "Find him!" Vanessa screamed. "Find him, you idiot! If he changes the will, if he talks to his lawyer, if he is not in Mexico by tomorrow, we are dead. Do you hear me, Marcus? Dead." "I am looking," Marcus said, running toward the exit. "I am looking." He burst out of the hospital doors into the night. He looked left. He looked right. The street was empty. The rain was falling, washing away my tracks. He stood there in the cold, realizing for the first time that the old man he thought was a burden was actually a predator, and the predator was loose. Marcus pulled at his hair. He let out a scream of pure frustration. "Where are you, old man?" he howled at the darkness. I was 3 miles away, driving a blue sedan into the night, listening to the rhythmic thump of the tires on the pavement. I wasn't running away. I was running toward the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I was driving the car. The rain had turned into a freezing drizzle by the time I pulled the nondescript blue sedan onto the street where I had lived for 20 years. I parked 3 houses down under the canopy of an old oak tree, killing the lights and the engine in one fluid motion. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of silence that money buys deep in the suburbs where the driveways are long and the secrets are buried deep behind manicured hedges. I sat in the dark for a moment, watching my own house. It stood on the hill, a sprawling colonial estate that I had bought with the proceeds from the casino sale, a fortress I had built to keep my family safe. Now it looked like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. The windows were dark. Marcus and Vanessa were either still at the hospital searching for me, or they were on their way back, their panic likely turning into a frantic rage. I had a window of time, maybe an hour, maybe less. I didn't move like an old man anymore. The adrenaline coursing through my veins had burned away the stiffness in my joints. I was the head of security again, and this was a black op. I walked up the driveway, sticking to the shadows of the landscaping. I reached the front door, the heavy oak slab I had refinished myself last summer. I pulled out my key ring, the brass keys jingling softly. I slid the house key into the lock. It stopped halfway. I pushed. It wouldn't go in. I tried to turn it, but the cylinder was frozen solid against my efforts. They had changed the locks. I pulled the key out and stared at it. We hadn't even left for the airport 12 hours ago. They must have had a locksmith waiting in the driveway the moment we pulled out. This wasn't a crime of passion or desperation. This was a calculated liquidation. They had erased my access before I was even in the air. I didn't panic. I walked around to the side of the house, to the service entrance near the garage. I tried the keypad. I punched in the code, my wedding anniversary. The light blinked red, access denied. They had wiped the codes. Smart, I thought, but not smart enough. I went to the back patio. There was a loose window latch in the sunroom, a defect I had noticed a month ago and kept meaning to fix. I thanked God for my own procrastination. I used a thin blade from my pocket knife to slide the latch. It gave way with a soft click. I slid the window up and climbed inside, dropping silently onto the tiled floor. The air inside the house was stale. It didn't smell like home anymore. It smelled of cardboard and haste. I pulled a small flashlight from my pocket, shielding the beam with my hand so it wouldn't alert the neighbors. I swept the light across the room and my heart stopped. The house was gutted. The paintings were gone from the walls, leaving rectangular dust outlines like ghosts. The furniture was covered in sheets, but it was the silence that hurt the most. The soul of the house had been stripped out. I made my way to the garage. I needed to check the vehicles. I needed to see if they had sold my vintage Cadillac. I opened the door from the mudroom and stepped into the cold concrete space. The Cadillac was there covered in a tarp, but it was surrounded by mountains of cardboard boxes. I walked closer, shining my light on the labels written in Vanessa's sharp, angular handwriting. Charity, trash, estate sale. I opened a box marked trash. My breath hitched in my throat. Inside was a blue silk dress. I reached in and pulled it out. It smelled of lavender and vanilla. It was Betty's. It was the dress she wore to our son's wedding. The dress I had buried my face in the night she died, weeping until I ran out of tears. They had thrown it in a box marked trash. I looked at the other boxes. Betty's collection of porcelain angels, her books, her knitting needles, all of it. Everything that remained of the woman who had loved that boy more than life itself was piled up in the garage waiting for the garbage truck. They hadn't just planned to kill me. They had planned to erase us both. They wanted the money, but they didn't want the memory. I gently folded the blue dress and placed it back in the box. I couldn't take it with me. I couldn't save it. Not yet. I had to focus. The rage that had been a hot fire in my gut turned into cold ice. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was efficient. I left the garage and went upstairs to my study. This was the nerve center of my life. The place where I managed my investments, where I kept the deeds and the trust documents. The door was open. I walked in and swept the flashlight across the room. It looked like a bomb had gone off. The drawers of my mahogany desk were pulled out and dumped on the floor. Files were scattered everywhere like fallen leaves. Papers covered the Persian rug, bank statements, tax returns, medical records. They had been looking for something specific. They had been looking for the accounts they didn't have access to. I walked to the wall behind my desk where the painting of the ship hung. I swung the painting aside. The wall safe was open. It hadn't been cracked by a professional. It had been brutalized. The steel around the dial was twisted and scarred by a heavy drill. They had brute forced it. It must have taken them hours. The safe was empty. My emergency cash was gone. The gold coins I kept for a rainy day were gone. The deed to the house was gone. I stood there amidst the wreckage of my privacy, looking at the empty metal box. They had stripped me clean. If I had died in Mexico as planned, they would have had everything. I stepped back and my foot crunched on something. I looked down. It was the wastebasket overturned in their frenzy. Papers had spilled out onto the floor. I shone the light on the pile. Most of it was shredder confetti, but there was one piece of paper that was crumpled but intact. It looked like a glossy brochure. I picked it up and smoothed it out on the desk. It was a pamphlet printed on cheap paper. The colors were garish, bright yellow and red. The text was in Spanish and English. Casa del Último Descanso, Tijuana, Mexico. Home of the final rest. I read the bullet points listed under the services. Private rooms, affordable cash rates, no identification required for admission, discreet end-of-life care, no contact policy. I stared at the paper, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. This wasn't a retirement home. This wasn't a medical facility. It was a dumping ground. I knew places like this from my days in security. They were black holes. You paid a lump sum, usually $10,000 or $20,000 cash, and you dropped off a relative. The facility took them in, stripped them of their ID, and kept them drugged until they died of neglect or natural causes. There were no phone lines for patients, no mail service, no records sent back to the States. It was a place where people went to evaporate. This was their plan. They weren't going to murder me violently. They were going to fly me to Mexico, drive me to this hellhole, hand over a bag of cash, and walk away. I would wake up in a dirty room surrounded by strangers, unable to speak the language, unable to call for help, my mind foggy from the drugs they would pump into me. I would die alone on a cot smelling of bleach and urine, wondering why my son never came back. And back here in the States, Marcus and Vanessa would play the grieving family. Dad loved Mexico, they would say. He wandered off the resort. The police are looking, but you know how it is down there. They would wait the legal amount of time, declare me dead in absentia, and claim the insurance money. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from falling. It was one thing to want your father's money. It was another thing to sentence him to a slow, lonely, terrifying death in a foreign land. This wasn't greed. This was hatred. You have to hate someone to do this to them. I looked at the brochure again. There was a handwritten note in the margin in Vanessa's script. Deposit paid via Western Union. Drop-off scheduled for Friday 2 p.m. Ask for Raoul. Friday. That was tomorrow. I folded the brochure and put it in my pocket. This was it. This was the smoking gun. This was the proof that they weren't just bad children, they were monsters. I heard a car door slam outside. I froze. I switched off the flashlight. I moved to the window and peered through the blinds. A taxi had pulled up to the curb. Marcus was getting out. He looked frantic. His tie was undone. His jacket was flapping in the wind. He was alone. Vanessa must have stayed in Mexico or was on her way back separately. He ran up the driveway, fumbling with his keys. I was trapped. I looked around the room. There was no way out except the door he was about to come through. I couldn't go back out the window in the sunroom. He would see me if he turned on the lights downstairs. I heard the front door open. Vanessa, he screamed, his voice echoing through the house. Vanessa, answer the phone. He was talking to himself or hoping she was there. He sounded unhinged. He stomped up the stairs. He was coming to the office. He was coming to check the safe again or maybe to destroy more evidence. I looked at the closet. It was too shallow. I looked at the desk. Too open. I saw the curtains. Heavy velvet drapes that Betty had picked out. They were floor-length, pooling on the rug. I moved fast. I stepped behind the drapes, pressing my back against the cold window pane. I held my breath. I gripped the handle of my cane, ready to swing if I had to. Marcus burst into the room. He flipped on the light switch. The room flooded with light, but I was hidden in the folds of the velvet. Where is it? He muttered, pacing the room. Where is the file? He was tearing through the papers on the floor, kicking the piles I had just looked at. He was looking for something specific. He stopped at the desk. He picked up the wastebasket. He dumped it out again, shaking it. Where is the brochure? He hissed. I know I threw it here. He was looking for the pamphlet I had in my pocket. He knew it was dangerous. He knew if anyone found it, the trail would lead straight to a prison cell. He groaned, a sound of pure frustration. He kicked the desk. Stupid, he yelled. Stupid, stupid, stupid. His phone rang. He snatched it from his pocket. Vanessa, he said, his voice trembling. No, I didn't find him. He is a ghost. The hospital said he just walked out. No, the police won't put out an APB for a grown man who checked himself out. We are screwed, Ness. He listened, pacing back and forth, passing within inches of where I stood. I am at the house, he said. I am looking for the paperwork, the Tijuana info. I can't find it. I think I might have shredded it, but I am not sure. He paused. Yeah, I know. If he finds it, we are done. Look, just get back here. We need to find him before he talks to anyone. Before he talks to his lawyer. If he changes, that will Ness. We are dead. He listened again. Okay. Okay. I will stay here. I will wait in case he comes back. He is sick, right? He has to come home eventually. He has nowhere else to go. He hung up. He walked out of the room. I heard him go into his bedroom down the hall. I heard the door slam. He was staying. He was going to wait for me like a spider in a web. I waited 10 minutes. I waited until the house was silent again. I slipped out from behind the curtain. I didn't make a sound. I crept into the hallway. I could hear the faint sound of the TV from his room. I walked down the stairs, placing my feet on the edges of the steps where they wouldn't creak. I went to the back door, the one in the kitchen. I unlocked it quietly. I stepped out into the night. I walked back to my car, hidden in the shadows down the street. I got in. I didn't turn on the lights until I was 3 blocks away. I drove to the warehouse district, to the address Ray had given me. My hands were gripping the wheel so tight they hurt. I had the brochure. I had the knowledge. Marcus thought I had nowhere else to go. He thought I was a helpless old man who would inevitably wander back to the only home he knew. He was wrong. I wasn't going home. I was going to war. And when I came back, I wouldn't be knocking on the door. I would be kicking it down. The morning sun did not bring warmth. It only brought a harsh, revealing light to the crime scene that was my life. I stood on the front porch of the house I had paid for, wearing a hospital gown tucked clumsily into my trousers and a borrowed oversized cardigan I had found in the trunk of the blue sedan. I had rubbed dirt on my face and messed up my hair until I looked exactly like what they wanted me to be, a broken, confused old man who had wandered away from safety. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a slow, heavy rhythm of rage, but my hands were shaking with a practiced tremor. This was the hardest undercover operation of my life. I wasn't infiltrating a cartel or a rogue casino. I was infiltrating my own home. I raised my hand to knock. I hesitated. For a second, the father in me screamed to run away to spare myself the pain of looking into their eyes and seeing the murder lurking there. But the security chief in me, the man who had kept millions of dollars safe from thieves, silenced that voice. I needed to know the end game. I needed to see the whites of their eyes when they pulled the trigger. I knocked. 3 weak tentative raps on the heavy oak door. I waited. I could hear movement inside, heavy footsteps running, the sound of a chain being undone. The deadbolt sliding back. The door swung open. Marcus stood there. He looked like a man who had stared into the abyss and blinked. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with dark circles that spoke of a sleepless night spent hunting for a missing body. His shirt was rumpled, the top buttons undone, and he smelled of stale scotch and fear. When he saw me, the color drained from his face so fast, I thought he might faint. He gripped the doorframe, his knuckles turning white as if the wood was the only thing keeping him upright. "Dad," he whispered. It was a sound of pure disbelief. I blinked at him, letting my mouth hang slightly open. I tilted my head, looking past him into the foyer as if I didn't quite recognize him or the house. "Marcus," I asked, my voice quavering high and thin, "is that you, son?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He scanned the street behind me, his eyes darting left and right, looking for police cars, looking for lawyers, looking for anyone who might have brought me back. But there was only the empty, quiet suburban street. "Dad, where have you been?" he hissed, pulling me inside and slamming the door shut behind me. "We have been looking everywhere for you. The hospital said you ran away." I let him pull me. I stumbled slightly, leaning heavily against the wall. I looked at the familiar hallway, the family photos that were now lies hanging on the wall. I don't know," I mumbled, rubbing my forehead. I woke up, and there were bright lights, and beeping. I got scared, Marcus. I got so scared. I went outside to find you, but the bus didn't come. I looked down at my stomach, clutching it with both hands. "I am hungry, Marcus," I whined. "I haven't eaten. Did Betty make breakfast?" The mention of his dead mother made him flinch. He stared at me, searching my face for any sign of deception. He was looking for the sharp, intelligent father who used to catch him in lies when he was a teenager. But that father was gone. In his place stood a senile shell. I saw his shoulders relax. I saw the terror in his eyes replaced by a sudden, overwhelming relief. "Mom is gone, Dad," he said, his voice taking on that condescending tone people use with children. "Remember, Mom died." "Oh," I said, my face falling. "Right. I forgot. I forget things lately." Marcus let out a long breath, a sound that was almost a laugh. He ran a hand through his hair and closed his eyes for a second. "You are confused," he said. "You are having an episode. That is all. You just wandered off." He was convincing himself. He needed to believe it. Because if I wasn't confused, if I knew what had happened on the plane and in the ambulance, then he was going to prison. It was easier for him to believe I was broken than to believe he was caught. He grabbed my arm. "Come on," he said, guiding me toward the kitchen. "Let's get you some water. You look terrible." We walked into the kitchen. And there she was. Vanessa. She must have just arrived from the airport. Her suitcase was standing by the island, still tagged with the international barcode for Tijuana. She was on the phone, her back to us, her voice a low, furious whisper. "I don't care what the notary says," she was saying. "Hold the paperwork. If the old man doesn't show up in 24 hours, we have to—" She turned around. She saw me. She dropped the phone. It clattered onto the granite countertop loud in the silent kitchen. She stared at me with the same look one might give a corpse that had just sat up in its coffin. Her face was perfectly made up, but underneath the foundation I could see the lines of stress. She looked from me to Marcus, her eyes wide with a silent question. Does he know? Marcus shook his head slightly. A microscopic movement. "No. Vanessa, he is back," Marcus said, his voice steady now, gaining confidence. "He just walked up to the door. He is having a bad day. He thinks Mom is still alive. He doesn't remember the hospital." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. She walked toward me slowly like a predator inspecting a trap that had malfunctioned. She came right up to my face, invading my personal space, smelling of expensive duty-free perfume and malice. "Otis," she said softly, "where did you go?" I looked at her. I tried to make my eyes look vacant, glassy. "Vanessa," I asked, "when did you get here?" I thought, weren't we going on a trip? To the beach. She froze. Her eyes locked onto mine, searching for a spark of recognition, searching for the memory of the plane ride. "Yes, Otis," she said carefully. "We were. But you got sick. Do you remember getting sick?" I frowned, concentrating hard. "My chest hurt," I mumbled. "It hurt bad." And then, noise. Sirens. And then, I was walking. I just wanted to come home. Is this home? I looked around the kitchen as if I had never seen it before. "Yes, Dad," Marcus said, patting my shoulder. "This is home. You are safe now." Vanessa let out a breath. She looked at Marcus, and a slow, cruel smile spread across her red lips. I saw the communication pass between them, the relief, the realization that their golden goose hadn't flown the coop he had just gotten lost in the yard. "Well, thank God you are safe," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We were so worried." She turned to Marcus. "Get him some water," she said, "and maybe some of that soup. He looks dehydrated." Marcus went to the fridge. Vanessa took my arm and led me to the kitchen table. "Sit down, Otis," she said. "You need to rest. You have had a big adventure." I sat down, slumping in the chair. I watched her. She walked over to her suitcase and zipped it shut, hiding the evidence of her trip to Mexico. She picked up her phone and typed a quick message, probably to the facility in Tijuana, telling them to hold the reservation. "So," Marcus said, placing a glass of water in front of me. "You really don't remember anything after the plane?" I shook my head. "It is all fuzzy, like a dream." "Why was I on a plane, Marcus?" He looked at Vanessa. She nodded. "We were taking you to a spa, Dad," he lied smoothly, "for your health. But it was too much excitement for you. The doctor said you need to stay close to home now." "Close to home," I repeated. "That sounds nice. I don't like to travel." Marcus leaned against the counter and crossed his arms. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and triumph. "You know, Dad," he said, "this scare, it proves something. It proves you really can't live alone anymore. You wandering off like that, getting lost in the city. It is dangerous. It is irresponsible," Vanessa added, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "You could have been killed. And then where would we be? Where would you be?" I thought. "You would be rich." "I am sorry," I whispered, looking at my hands. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "It is okay," Marcus said. "But we have to make sure it doesn't happen again. We have to take steps." "Steps?" I asked. "Yes," Vanessa said, turning to face us. "We need to make sure you are protected. We can't have you running around the streets in a hospital gown. It is embarrassing, Otis, and it puts the estate at risk." "The estate?" There it was. "We were thinking," Marcus said, stepping in. "Since you are confused, since you are having these memory lapses, maybe it is time we helped you more with the paperwork, with the decisions." He walked over to the counter where a stack of mail was sitting. He pulled out a large brown envelope. I recognized the return address. It was from his lawyer, the crooked one. "We have some papers, Dad," he said casually. "Just standard stuff. Power of attorney, guardianship. It just means that if you get sick again or if you get lost, Vanessa and I can make decisions for you. We can access your accounts to pay your bills so you don't have to worry about math. You hate math, right? I hated math. That was a joke. I was a man who could calculate the odds of a roulette wheel in my head in 3 seconds. I guess I said. "Math is hard now." "Exactly," Vanessa said, smiling that shark smile. "So we will handle it. We will handle everything. You just need to sign a few things. Maybe after you eat. After I eat." Marcus opened a can of soup. He poured it into a bowl and put it in the microwave. I watched him. I watched the way he moved. He was relaxed now. The tension was gone. He thought he had won. He thought the old man was broken, his mind mush, his will gone. He thought he could just slide a piece of paper in front of me and take everything I had built over 50 years. He winked at Vanessa. A slow, deliberate wink. "It is Plan B," he mouthed to her. Vanessa nodded. She touched her diamond earring. Plan B, she whispered back. I sat there clutching my glass of water and I felt a fire ignite in my belly. They weren't going to send me to Mexico anymore. That was too risky now that the hospital had a record of me. No, they were going to keep me here. They were going to imprison me in my own home, drug me into submission, and legally strip me of my identity until I was nothing but a signature on a check. They were going to erase me. But they had made one fatal miscalculation. They assumed the man sitting at the table was Otis the victim. They didn't know they were sitting with Otis, the head of security. And the head of security had just initiated a lockdown. The microwave beeped. "Soup is ready, Dad," Marcus said, cheerful. "Eat up. We have a big day ahead of us." I picked up the spoon. My hand shook, but my eyes were clear. "Yes, son," I said. "We certainly do." The kitchen island in Marcus and Vanessa's house was a slab of cold gray marble that looked more like an autopsy table than a place to eat breakfast. I sat on a high stool hunched over my chest, my hands trembling with a rhythm I had perfected over the last 24 hours. I was playing the role of the invalid, the broken old man who had lost his wits on a plane, but inside my mind was a steel trap snapping shut on every detail, every movement, every lie. Vanessa stood at the stove, her back to me. She was wearing a floral apron over her designer clothes, playing the part of the dutiful daughter-in-law. She was stirring a pot of tomato soup, the steam rising up and mixing with the scent of her sharp chemical perfume. She was humming a soft tune, something cheerful and completely at odds with the murder she had tried to orchestrate at 30,000 feet. Marcus sat across from me, scrolling on his phone, ignoring my existence entirely. He was likely checking the odds on the football game or looking for a new way to gamble away money he didn't have. I watched Vanessa's reflection in the dark glass of the oven door. It was an old security trick. Never look at the target directly. Look at the reflection. It tells you what they are doing when they think they are unseen. I saw her reach into the pocket of her apron. She pulled out a small orange prescription bottle. She popped the cap. She shook 2 pills into her palm. They were bright blue, not the pale blue of a mild sedative, but a deep electric blue that looked like poison. She didn't swallow them. She placed them on the counter. She took the back of a heavy silver spoon and crushed them. I heard the faint grinding sound, the crunch of chalk turning to dust. She swept the blue powder into the ladle of soup, stirring it vigorously until it dissolved into the red liquid. She turned around holding a steaming bowl with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were dead things, cold and calculating, like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Here we go, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Nice hot tomato soup. It will make you feel better. You looked so pale after your little episode yesterday." She placed the bowl in front of me. The red soup looked innocent enough, but I knew better. I looked at the liquid swirling. I looked at the tiny, undissolved specks of blue floating near the rim. I picked up the spoon, my hand shaking. I lifted it halfway to my mouth, then stopped. "What is in this, Vanessa?" I asked. My voice slurred and weak. "It tastes funny." I hadn't even tasted it yet, but I wanted to see her reaction. Vanessa didn't blink. "Oh, that is just a little basil, Dad. And I put in a special supplement. A vitamin." "A vitamin," I repeated. "Yes," she said, patting my shoulder. "It is for your brain. It helps with memory and focus. Being a pharmacist, I know what is best for you. We need to get your strength up for the future. The future. The future where I was locked away in a Mexican basement with no name and no memory." "Eat up," Marcus grunted from his phone, not even looking up. "Vanessa knows her stuff. Stop being difficult, Dad." I looked at the soup. If I ate this, I would be out cold. They could carry me to a car, drive me to the border, or just have me sign whatever they wanted while I was drooling on myself. I needed a distraction. I needed an out. Just then, Barnaby trotted into the kitchen. Barnaby was a golden retriever, a sweet, dumb animal that Marcus had bought for appearances and then promptly ignored. The dog was always hungry, always looking for a scrap of affection or food. He nudged my leg with his wet nose, his tail wagging a slow, hopeful rhythm. I looked at the dog. I looked at the soup. I felt a pang of guilt for what I was about to do, but in war, collateral damage is inevitable. I lifted the spoon to my lips. My hand spasmed. I jerked my arm violently. "Oops," I cried out. The bowl flew off the table. It crashed onto the tiled floor, shattering into ceramic shards. The red soup splattered everywhere, coating the white cabinets, my shoes, and a large pool on the floor. Dad, Marcus yelled, jumping up his chair, screeching against the floor. "Are you kidding me? That is Italian tile. I am sorry," I stammered, shrinking back into my role. My hand, it just slipped. The stroke. Vanessa stared at the mess on the floor. Her jaw tightened. She wasn't mad about the tile. She was mad about the wasted dose. She was mad that her blue powder was now soaking into the grout instead of my bloodstream. Barnaby didn't wait for permission. He saw food. He dove in his pink tongue, lapping up the soup with frantic joy, ignoring the shards of ceramic. "No, Barnaby." Vanessa shrieked. She lunged for the dog, but it was too late. He had already licked up half the puddle. "Get the dog out of here," Marcus shouted, kicking at the animal. Barnaby yelped and scurried away, licking his chops, happy to have had a warm meal for once. Vanessa stood there, staring at the spot where the soup had been. She looked terrified. Not for the dog, but for what the dog might reveal. "It is just soup," Marcus said, grabbing a roll of paper towels. "Why are you freaking out?" Vanessa looked at me. She saw me watching her. She composed herself instantly. It had garlic in it," she lied. "Garlic is bad for dogs." I sat there pretending to be ashamed, wiping soup off my trousers. But inside I was counting. I was waiting. 10 minutes. That was how long it took. Barnaby had walked into the living room and curled up on his expensive dog bed. I watched him from the kitchen table where I still sat. At first he just seemed to be resting. Then his breathing changed. It became heavy, ragged. His legs twitched, and then he went still. Too still. Marcus walked into the living room to turn on the TV. He nudged the dog with his foot. "Move over, Mutt," he said. Barnaby didn't move. He didn't even lift his head. He was a lump of golden fur. Marcus frowned. He nudged the dog harder. "Barnaby, hey, wake up." Nothing. The dog was out cold, comatose. Marcus looked back at the kitchen. "Vanessa," he called out. "Something is wrong with the dog. He is like a rug. He won't wake up." Vanessa didn't look up from the counter where she was scrubbing the floor with bleach. "He is fine," she said, her voice tight. "He just has a food coma. Leave him alone." I looked at the dog. That blue pill wasn't a vitamin. It wasn't a supplement. It was a tranquilizer. A heavy-duty sedative, probably something she stole from the pharmacy safe. Enough to knock out a grown man or put a 70-pound dog into a stupor. If I had eaten that soup, I would be in the back of a car right now heading south. I shivered. It was a close call. Too close. I am tired," I said, standing up shakily. "I want to go to bed." "Not yet," Vanessa said, standing up and blocking my path. "You haven't taken your medicine, Dad." "Medicine?" I asked. "Yes," she said, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out another pill. This one wasn't crushed. It was whole. A small white tablet this time. "Since you spilled the soup," she said, her eyes hard as flint, "you have to take this. It is for your blood pressure. You don't want another stroke, do you?" I looked at the pill. I didn't know what it was. It could be aspirin. It could be cyanide. It could be another sedative. I don't need it," I said, backing away. "Take it," Marcus ordered, walking back into the kitchen. "Just take the damn pill, Dad. Stop being a child. Vanessa knows what she is doing." They cornered me, Marcus on one side, Vanessa on the other. I was an old man in a kitchen with two predators. If I refused, they might force it down my throat. If I fought, I would blow my cover. I had to be smart. I had to use the oldest trick in the book. A trick I learned from a card shark in Reno named Jimmy Two Fingers. "Okay," I said, surrendering. "Okay, I will take it." Vanessa held out the pill and a glass of water. I took the pill. I placed it on my tongue. I took a sip of water. I threw my head back and swallowed, making a loud gulping sound. I opened my mouth to show them. It was empty. "Good," Vanessa said. "Now go to bed. We have a big day tomorrow." I shuffled out of the kitchen. I walked down the hall to the guest room they had assigned me. I closed the door. I locked it. I rushed to the bathroom. I leaned over the sink. I curled my tongue back. The white pill fell out. I hadn't swallowed it. I had tucked it under my tongue in the soft pocket of flesh next to my molars. It was dissolving, bitter and chalky, but it was whole enough. I wrapped the pill in a piece of tissue paper. I put it in the hidden pocket of my jacket. Evidence. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bright with adrenaline. They had tried to drug me twice in 1 hour. They were desperate. They were accelerating the timeline. I needed to get out. I needed to move. But I couldn't just run. If I ran, they would hunt me. They would freeze my accounts. They would claim I was mentally incompetent and send the police to drag me back. No, I needed to destroy them. I needed to expose them. I sat on the edge of the bed. I listened to the house. I heard them arguing downstairs. That was too much, Vanessa was hissing. You almost killed the dog. It worked, didn't it? Marcus replied. The dog is out. If the old man had eaten it, he would be out too. We could have put him in the car tonight. I clenched my fists. They were discussing my abduction like a logistics problem. I pulled out the burner phone from my shoe. I dialed Ray. They tried to drug me, Ray, I whispered. Blue pills, sedatives. The dog ate the soup and he is comatose. Did you take anything? Ray asked, his voice sharp. I palmed it, I said. I have the pill. Good, Ray said. Keep it. We can analyze it later. Listen. Otis, I found something. I hacked Marcus's email. And he is broke, Otis. Completely. But it is worse than that. He has a gambling debt, but not with a casino. With the cartel. The cartel. The blood drained from my face. He was laundering money, Ray continued. Through his brokerage firm, he lost a shipment's worth of crypto. $2 million. They gave him a deadline. Thanksgiving. That was tomorrow. If he doesn't pay them, Ray said they aren't going to break his legs. They are going to skin him. That is why he needs your money. That is why he needs you dead or gone. He is trying to buy his life with yours. I closed my eyes. My son. My stupid, greedy son. He had gotten into bed with monsters and now he was trying to feed me to them to save himself. What do I do, Ray? You need to get out of that house, Ray said. Tonight. I can't, I said. They are watching the doors. They have an alarm system. If I open a window, it chimes. Then you need a distraction, Ray said. You need a reason to leave that they can't ignore. I looked around the room. I saw the smoke detector on the ceiling. I have an idea, I said. Otis, don't do anything crazy. I am not going to be crazy, Ray, I said. I am going to be senile. I am going to be a confused old man who makes a mistake. I hung up. I waited until the house was quiet, until I heard their bedroom door close. I walked out of the room. I went to the kitchen. I found the toaster. I took a stack of paper napkins. I stuffed them into the slots. I pushed the lever down. I stood back and waited. It didn't take long. Smoke began to curl up black and acrid. Then a flame licked out. The smoke detector screamed. It was a piercing, ear-splitting shriek. I heard footsteps running upstairs. I heard shouting. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed my cane. I started screaming. Fire, fire. Marcus ran into the kitchen in his boxers. Vanessa was right behind him. They saw the flames. They panicked. Get the extinguisher, Marcus yelled. In the chaos and the smoke and the noise, they didn't see me slip out the back door. I walked out into the snow. I walked fast. I didn't look back at the house. I wasn't running away from a fire. I was running into the war, and I was bringing the heat with me. The next day, the house was transformed. The smell of bleach and dog hair was replaced by the aroma of roasting turkey and cinnamon, though I knew the turkey was store-bought and the cinnamon came from a can of air freshener. Marcus and Vanessa were throwing an early Thanksgiving dinner. It was a Tuesday, but they told me it was because they wanted to celebrate before the holiday rush. I knew the truth. They were celebrating the imminent transfer of my assets. They had invited guests not for company but for witnesses. I was allowed out of my room for the occasion. Vanessa had even bought me a new shirt, a cheap polyester button-down that scratched my neck. She combed my hair and put a napkin on my lap, treating me like a toddler who's about to be shown off to the relatives. Now, Dad, she said, her voice tight, behave yourself. We have important people coming, friends from the club, and Mr. Henderson. He is a lawyer, a very nice man. He is going to help us with the paperwork. The paperwork. The trap. The guests arrived at 6. They were a collection of people who looked like they had been cut from the same catalog of suburban affluence. The women wore too much jewelry and the men wore sweaters tied around their necks. They walked into the house looking around with critical eyes, assessing the value of the furniture, the quality of the art. They didn't look at me. To them I was just a prop, an old man sitting in the corner drooling slightly, a reminder of mortality they preferred to ignore. Marcus paraded me around, introducing me with a performative sadness. "This is my father," he would say, his hand heavy on my shoulder. He has good days and bad days. Today is a bit of a fog for him. The guests would nod sympathetically, sipping their wine. Oh, how tragic, one woman said, looking right through me. It is so hard when they lose their faculties. You are saints for taking care of him. Saints. They were wolves in cashmere. We sat down to dinner. I was placed at the end of the table next to Mr. Henderson, the lawyer. He was a small man with shifty eyes and a nervous tic. He kept checking his watch. He didn't eat. He just drank water and stared at me, waiting for his cue. The conversation flowed around me, a river of gossip about golf scores and kitchen renovations. I ate my mashed potatoes slowly, letting my hand shake, letting a few drops fall onto my napkin. I watched them. I listened. So Marcus, one of the men, asked, "How is the portfolio doing? I heard crypto took a hit." Marcus laughed a little too loudly. "Just a market correction, Bob. We are diversified. In fact, we are about to make a major acquisition. Very liquid." He glanced at me. I was the acquisition. When the dessert was served, pumpkin pie that tasted like cardboard, Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. He reached under the table and pulled out a briefcase. The sound of the latches clicking open silenced the room. "If I may," he said, his voice oily, "I hate to interrupt the festivities, but we have a small matter of business to attend to. Given Mr. Jefferson's condition, Marcus and Vanessa have asked me to prepare some documents to ensure his estate is properly managed." He pulled out a thick stack of papers. They were bound in blue legal covers. "Power of attorney," he announced. "Durable and immediate. It grants Marcus full control over all financial and medical decisions." The guests nodded approvingly. "Very wise," someone murmured. "Protect the assets." Henderson slid the papers in front of me. He placed a heavy gold pen on top. "Jefferson," he said, speaking slowly and loudly as if I were deaf, "I need you to sign right here, next to the X. This is to help Marcus take care of you, to pay your bills, to make sure you are safe. Safe. Like I was safe on the plane. Like I was safe with the blue pills." I looked at the document. I saw the clauses: full authority, right to sell property, right to access all accounts. It was a total surrender. If I signed this, I ceased to exist as a legal entity. I became a ward of my son. I looked at Marcus. He was leaning forward, his eyes intense. "Just sign it, Dad," he urged. "It is for your own good." I looked at Vanessa. She was holding her breath, her hand gripping the stem of her wine glass. I reached for the pen. My hand trembled violently. I picked it up. I brought the tip to the paper. I looked around the table. 12 witnesses. 12 people who would swear in court that I signed this willingly, that I was lucid enough to hold a pen, but senile enough to need a guardian. I had to stop this. But I couldn't just say no. If I said no, they would claim I was incompetent. They would bring in a doctor to declare me unfit. I needed to delay. I needed to ruin the moment. I looked at the inkwell Henderson had placed on the table, a pretentious touch for a solemn occasion. I moved my hand toward the inkwell, pretending to dip the pen. "Oops," I said. My arm jerked. I knocked the heavy glass bottle over. Black ink spilled out. It flowed across the table like a dark river. It soaked into the white tablecloth. It splashed onto Henderson's suit, and most importantly, it flooded the document. The blue legal paper drank the ink, turning black and soggy. The signature line disappeared. The clauses dissolved. "Oh no," Henderson shouted, jumping up and knocking his chair over. "My suit! The contract!" Marcus stood up, his face turning red. "Dad, what did you do? I am sorry," I stammered, dropping the pen into the mess. "My hand, it slipped. I am so clumsy." Vanessa grabbed a napkin and tried to blot the ink, but it was hopeless. The document was ruined. "It is destroyed," she hissed. "We can't sign this." Henderson looked at the sodden pile of pulp. I don't have another copy," he said. "The printer is at the office. The office is closed for the holiday." Marcus looked at me with pure hatred. He knew I had done it on purpose, or at least he suspected, but he couldn't prove it, not in front of his guests. He had to play the part of the patient son. "It is okay, Dad," he said through gritted teeth. "Accidents happen." He turned to the guests, forcing a smile. "Well, that is exciting. Let's move into the living room for coffee. We can handle this tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Henderson said, wiping ink off his tie. I can bring a fresh copy in the morning. Yes, Marcus said. Tomorrow, first thing. They herded the guests away, leaving me at the ruined table. I looked at the black stain spreading across the cloth. It looked like a Rorschach test. To them, it looked like a disaster. To me, it looked like victory. I had bought myself 12 hours. 12 hours to get to the bank. 12 hours to execute Ray's plan. Marcus came back into the dining room. He leaned over me, his breath hot in my ear. "You old fool," he whispered. "You think you are clever, but you just delayed the inevitable. Tomorrow morning we are going to the bank, and you are going to empty that safe deposit box. And then you are going to sign whatever I put in front of you. Or so help me God, I will put you in the ground myself." I looked at him. I let my eyes go wide with fear. "I am sorry, Marcus." I whimpered. "I just wanted to help." He shoved my shoulder. "Go to your room," he said. "Get out of my sight." I shuffled away. I walked down the hall to my room. I closed the door. I didn't lock it. I didn't need to. I wasn't sleeping tonight. I sat on the edge of the bed. I pulled out the burner phone. "Ray," I whispered. "Yeah," Ray answered. "The contract is dead," I said. "For tonight. But he is taking me to the bank tomorrow. He wants the safe deposit box." "Good," Ray said. "Let him take you." What I asked. "Let him take you to the bank, Otis. That is where we trap him." "How?" "You are going to trigger the silent alarm," Ray said. "But not with a button. With a code. A code. There is a duress code," Ray explained. "For the vault. If you enter your PIN backwards, it alerts the manager and the police that you are being coerced." "I didn't know that," I said. "Most people don't," Ray said. "But you are the head of security, Otis. You know everything." I smiled in the dark. "Tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow," Ray confirmed. "And Otis." "Yeah." "The cartel deadline is tomorrow night. If Marcus doesn't have the money by sunset, he is a dead man walking." I closed the phone. I lay back on the bed. I thought about my son. I thought about the boy who used to catch fireflies in the backyard. I was about to feed him to the wolves, but he had invited the wolves to dinner. And now he had to pay the bill. I closed my eyes. I needed to rest. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day. The morning sun was blinding as it bounced off the hood of Marcus's car, but inside the vehicle the atmosphere was dark and suffocating. We were driving to First National Bank. My son gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles, his eyes darting constantly to the rearview mirror as if he expected the devil himself to be tailing us. In a way, he was right. The devil was chasing him, but he didn't have horns and a pitchfork. He had a deadline and a pair of pliers. I sat in the passenger seat, huddled in my coat, staring blankly out the window. To anyone looking in, I was a frail, confused old man being taken on an errand by his dutiful son. I let my mouth hang slightly open. I let my hands tremble in my lap. But behind my clouded eyes, my mind was running through the schematics of the bank vault I had helped design the security protocols for 15 years ago. "We are almost there, Dad," Marcus said, his voice tight and high-pitched. "Just a quick stop. We need to get your papers for the trip." "Remember the trip?" I turned to him slowly, blinking like a tortoise. "Trip," I mumbled. "Are we going fishing?" "No," Dad, Marcus snapped, then caught himself forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "No. Mexico. The beach. But first we need the box. The safe deposit box. You have the key, right?" I patted my pocket. I felt the heavy brass key. I also felt the small burner phone Ray had given me. "I have the key," I said. "Good. Great. Now listen to me, Dad. When we get inside, I am going to do the talking. You just sit there. And when we get to the box, you need to type in the code." "Do you remember the code?" I nodded slowly. "The code. Yes. It is your birthday." Marcus let out a sigh of relief. "Yes. Exactly. My birthday. Don't forget it. If you mess this up, Dad, we can't go to the beach." We pulled into the bank parking lot. Marcus didn't park in a spot. He pulled right up to the front doors, leaving the engine running for a second before realizing he couldn't leave me alone. He cursed under his breath, parked the car properly, and came around to haul me out. He didn't help me gentle. He gripped my arm hard, dragging me toward the glass doors. The bank smelled of floor wax and money. It was a smell I used to love, but today it smelled like a trap. The air conditioning was freezing. I shuffled my feet, making sure to look unsteady. Marcus marched me straight to the front desk, bypassing the line. "We need access to a safe deposit box," he told the teller, a young woman who looked at me with pity. "Box 404, Otis Jefferson." She looked at my ID. She looked at me. "Mr. Jefferson," she asked gently, "do you want to access your box?" I looked at Marcus. He squeezed my arm, painful and sharp. "Yes," I whispered. "The box." She led us back. The steel gate buzzed open. We walked down the hallway to the vault. The heavy circular door was open, revealing walls lined with hundreds of metal drawers. It was a mausoleum of secrets. The teller left us in a small private viewing room. It was a windowless cell with a single metal table and 2 chairs. She placed the long metal box on the table. "I will leave you to it," she said. "Just press the button when you are done." The door clicked shut. We were alone. Marcus didn't waste a second. He flipped the lid of the box open. It wasn't papers he was looking for. It was gold. It was the Krugerrands I had been collecting since the 70s. It was the stack of emergency cash. It was the bearer bonds. He saw them. His eyes lit up with a feverish greed. He reached for the bonds, but then he stopped. There was a secondary lock inside the box. A digital keypad I had installed years ago for extra security. The code Marcus hissed, pointing at the keypad. "Put in the code." I stared at the numbers. I knew the code. It was indeed his birthday. But I also knew the duress code. In the security world, we call it the panic sequence. If you enter your PIN backward or enter a specific error sequence 3 times, the system doesn't just lock. It sends a silent alarm directly to the manager's desk and the local precinct, indicating a robbery in progress or a hostage situation. I reached out with a shaking finger. "Hurry up," Marcus whispered, checking his watch. I pressed a number. Beep, then another. Beep, then a third. I paused. I looked at Marcus. "What was it again, son?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Was it April?" "It is August, you old bat," Marcus snarled, leaning into my face. "August, 8/08. Oh, right. August." I pressed 0, then 9. The keypad let out a low, angry buzz. A red light flashed. "Incorrect code." Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making the gold coins jump. "Wrong," he shouted. "You put it in wrong? Focus, Dad. 0824, your son's birthday. How can you forget your son's birthday? I am sorry," I whimpered, shrinking back. "The buttons. They are so small." "Do it again," he ordered, "and get it right." I reached out again. My finger hovered over the 0. I pressed it. Then I pressed 8. Then I pressed 2. Then I pressed 5. Buzz. Red light. Incorrect code. 1 attempt remaining. Marcus grabbed his hair, pulling at it. He looked like he was about to scream. He looked at the camera in the corner of the room, then back at me. He lowered his voice to a terrifying whisper. "Listen to me," he said, grabbing my face with his hand, squeezing my cheeks. "You have one more try. If this box locks, it seals for 24 hours. I don't have 24 hours, Dad. If you don't open this box right now, I am going to leave you here. I am going to leave you in this room, and I am never coming back. Do you understand?" I looked into his eyes. I saw the abyss. I saw a man who had completely severed his soul. "I understand," I lisped through his grip. He let go. "Do it." I reached out. I reached. I pressed 0. I pressed 8. I pressed 2. And then I looked at him one last time. I wanted to see his face when the trap snapped shut. I pressed 6. Buzz. The sound was different this time. It was a long, continuous tone. The red light didn't just flash, it stayed on solid crimson. A heavy mechanical clank echoed from the door of the room. The magnetic locks had engaged. System lockout. The keypad read. Security notified. No. Marcus screamed. "No, no, no. What did you do? You stupid old man. What did you do?" He frantically punched buttons, but the keypad was dead. He tried to open the door. It was locked. "We are trapped," he yelled, pounding on the steel. "Open the door. Let us out." I sat on the chair, my hands folded in my lap. I stopped shaking. I stopped acting. I just waited. 2 minutes later, the door buzzed. It opened. Standing there was not the young teller. It was Mr. Henderson, the bank manager. I had known Bill Henderson for 30 years. I had hired his security detail when he was a junior VP. We had smoked cigars together. He looked at Marcus, sweating and frantic. Then he looked at me. He saw me sitting calmly. He saw the red light on the box. Mr. Jefferson Henderson said, his voice serious. We received a duress signal. Is everything all right? Marcus jumped in before I could speak. He is fine, Marcus babbled. He is just confused. He forgot the code. He has dementia. He pressed the wrong buttons. We just need you to override it. We need the contents of this box immediately. It is a medical emergency. Henderson looked at Marcus. He didn't like what he saw. Then he looked at me again. I caught his eye. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. I just gave him a look. A look we had shared across poker tables 1,000 times. The look that said, I am holding aces, and he is bluffing. Then I gave him the signal. A slow, deliberate blink of my left eye followed by a tap of my index finger on the table. Henderson's expression didn't change, but I saw the recognition in his eyes. He understood. The old security chief was running an op. I'm afraid I can't do that, Sir Henderson said, turning back to Marcus. What do you mean you can't? Marcus demanded. I am his son. I have power of attorney. The power of attorney allows you to manage accounts, Henderson said smoothly, lying with the grace of a professional. But a duress lockout is a federal banking protocol. Once that red light goes on, the contents of the box are frozen by the Department of Homeland Security pending an investigation. It is automatic. I couldn't open it if I wanted to. The timer is set for 48 hours. 48 hours, Marcus whispered. The color drained from his face. He looked like a ghost. I don't have 48 hours, he said to himself. I don't have 48 minutes. I am sorry, Sir Henderson said, stepping aside and holding the door open. I have to ask you to leave the vault. Regulations. Marcus looked at the box one last time. He looked at the gold he couldn't touch. He looked at me. You did this, he hissed at me. You did this on purpose. I looked at him, my eyes blank and innocent. Did we get the money, son? I asked. Can we go to the beach now? Marcus let out a scream of pure frustration. He grabbed my arm, hauling me out of the chair. We are leaving, he shouted. Now! He dragged me out of the bank. Henderson watched us go, his hand hovering near the silent alarm button under his desk just in case. As we passed him, I gave him a tiny nod. He nodded back. The trap was set. Marcus threw me into the passenger seat of the car. He slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. He ran to the driver's side and jumped in. He peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching. He drove like a maniac. He was breathing hard, hyperventilating. What am I going to do? He muttered. What am I going to do? His phone rang. The sound was loud and jarring in the tense silence of the car. Marcus looked at the screen. He flinched. He didn't want to answer it, but he knew he had to. He pressed speakerphone. He needed to keep his hands on the wheel. Yeah, he answered, his voice shaking. Marcus, a voice said. It wasn't a friendly voice. It was deep, calm, and terrifying. It was the voice of a man who solved problems with a hammer. Hey, Tony, Marcus said, trying to sound casual. I was just at the bank. Did you get the package? Tony asked. There was a delay, Marcus said. A banking error. The system went down. Silence. I don't like delays, Tony said. And I don't like errors. Today is the day. You know the schedule. I know, Marcus said, sweat pouring down his face. I just need a little more time. 24 hours. Please, Tony. The money is there. I just can't access it until the lock resets. Tony laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. You are running out of friends, Marcus. And you are running out of time. You have until sunset. Sunset, Marcus squeaked. That is 4 hours away. Sunset, Tony repeated. If I don't have $2 million by the time the sun goes down, I am going to send some guys over. And they aren't going to be looking for money. They are going to be looking for fingers. Click. The line went dead. Marcus dropped the phone. He stared at the road ahead. He was trembling so hard the car was shaking. He looked at me. He didn't see a father. He saw a liability. He saw the reason he was going to lose his fingers. This is your fault, he screamed at me, slamming his hand on the dashboard. You stupid old man. You killed us. You killed us both. I sat there silent. I watched the road. He was wrong. He wasn't going to die. Not yet. But he was going to wish he had. Because now he was desperate. And a desperate man makes mistakes. He pulled the car over to the side of the road. He turned to me. His eyes were wild. "We aren't going home," he said. "Where are we going?" I asked, keeping my voice small. "We are going for a ride," he said. "A long ride." I knew what that meant. He couldn't get the money. So he was going to execute the backup plan. The insurance policy. He was going to stage an accident. Here. In America. He put the car in gear. I tightened my grip on the door handle. The game had changed. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about survival. And I was ready. The blue sedan hummed down the deserted streets of the warehouse district, the rhythmic thump of the tires on the broken pavement serving as a metronome for my racing thoughts. The city lights were a distant glow behind me, replaced by the stark shadows of abandoned industry. I pulled into the lot of an old brick building that looked like it had been forgotten by time. It was Ray's place. Ray the Shark. A man who operated in the gray areas where the law didn't always reach, but where honor still meant something. I parked the car and walked to the side door. I didn't knock. I tapped a specific rhythm on the metal. 3, fast, 2, slow. The door opened immediately. Ray stood there, a silhouette against the dim light inside. He looked older than I remembered his face, a map of hard living, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Otis," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "You look like hell." "I feel like it," I said, stepping inside. The warehouse was a cavernous space filled with electronic surveillance equipment and the smell of stale coffee. Ray led me to a desk in the corner where a bank of monitors glowed with data. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. He pointed to the screen. "I found it," he said. "The reason your boy is sweating." He pulled up a file. It was a ledger, but not a bank ledger. It was a dark web transaction record, encrypted but broken by Ray's software. "Marcus has been playing with crypto," Ray said. "Big time. And he is bad at it, Otis. Really bad." I looked at the numbers. Red. All red. Losses that staggered the imagination. He leveraged everything, Ray continued. He borrowed from banks until they cut him off. Then he went to the hard money lenders, and when they cut him off, he went to the streets. "Who?" I asked, my voice tight. "A guy named Tony," Ray said. "Tony the Butcher. He runs a syndicated loan operation out of a basement in North Las Vegas. He doesn't use credit scores, Otis. He uses baseball bats." I knew the name. Tony was old school. Vicious. The kind of man who didn't make threats he didn't intend to keep. "How much?" I asked. $2 million, Ray said, plus vigorish. "And the deadline is Sunday." "Sunday. 3 days from now." "That explains it," I whispered. "That explains the rush. That explains Mexico. He needs the house. He needs the insurance money. He needs liquid cash to buy his life back." "He forged the deed," Ray said, pulling up another document. I found a copy in his email drafts. "He forged your signature on a quitclaim deed transferring the house to him, but the title company flagged it. They needed a notarized signature in person. That is why he couldn't sell it yet. He was going to take you to Mexico, get you declared incompetent or dead, and then use the power of attorney to push the sale through. He was going to kill me for $2 million. I said the words, tasting like ash in my mouth. Ray looked at me. His eyes were sympathetic, but hard. "He is desperate, Otis, and desperate men are dangerous. If he doesn't pay Tony by Sunday, they aren't going to sue him. They are going to erase him." I stared at the screen. My son. My flesh and blood. He had dug a hole so deep he was willing to bury me in it to climb out. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, replacing the shock. He had made his choice. He had chosen money over family. He had chosen betrayal over honor. Now he had to live with it. "Ray," I said, "get Tony on the phone." Ray blinked. "Tony, you want to talk to the guy who wants to kill your son?" "I want to buy the debt," I said. Ray stared at me for a long moment. Then a slow grin spread across his face. "You are a cold son of a gun, Otis," he said. He dialed a number. He put it on speaker. It rang 4 times. "Yeah," a voice answered. It was deep, guttural. Tony, Ray said. "It is Ray. I have someone who wants to talk business about the Jefferson account." "Jefferson." The voice laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "That kid is dead meat. Unless you are calling to pay his tab, don't waste my time." "I am calling to buy the paper," I said, leaning into the phone. "Who is this?" Tony asked. "This is Otis Jefferson," I said. "I was running security at the Olympus when you were still stealing hubcaps, Tony." There was a silence on the line, a respectful silence. Mr. Jefferson, Tony said, his tone changing instantly. I heard you were sick. I heard you were out of the game. I am back, I said, and I hear you are holding a note on my son. 2 million. That is right, Tony said, and it is due Sunday. I will pay it, I said, in full. Plus 10% for your trouble? You are bailing him out, Tony asked, sounding disappointed. That is generous, Mr. Jefferson, but the kid needs a lesson. I am not bailing him out, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was colder than the warehouse. I am buying the debt, Tony. I want you to transfer the marker to me. I will wire the funds to your offshore account tonight. And then what Tony asked. And then I said, I want you to do your job. My job, I want you to scare him, I said. I want you to terrify him. I want you to make him believe that his life is over. I want you to call him. I want you to visit his house. I want you to turn up the heat until he cracks. But don't touch him, I added. Not a hair on his head. If you hurt him, the deal is off and I will come for you. You want me to be the boogeyman? Tony asked, understanding dawning in his voice. I want him to know what it feels like to be hunted, I said. I want him to know what it feels like to be helpless. Tony laughed, a genuine laugh this time. Mr. Jefferson, you are a scary man. Do we have a deal, I asked. We have a deal, Tony said. Wire the money. I will make the call tonight. I hung up. Ray looked at me. He shook his head. You are going to let him think he is going to die, Ray asked. He was going to let me die, I said. He was going to let me die in a Mexican hospice alone and confused. I stood up. I walked to the window looking out at the dark parking lot. He needs to feel the weight of his choices, Ray. He needs to understand that there are no shortcuts. There are no bailouts. There is only the bill. And the bill is due. I pulled out my burner phone. I checked the tracking app I had installed on Marcus's phone years ago, a precaution I had taken after his first gambling problem. He was at home, probably pacing the floor, probably wondering where I was. I imagined him sitting in my living room, drinking my scotch, waiting for the phone to ring. It was about to ring. And the voice on the other end wasn't going to be me. It was going to be his nightmare. I turned back to Ray. Let's get to work, I said. I need to move some funds, and then I need to find a place to sleep. Ray nodded. There is a cot in the back. It is not the Ritz, but it is safe. Safe is all I need, I said. I sat down at the computer. I logged into my private accounts, the ones Marcus didn't know about, the ones I had built over 40 years of smart investments and hard work. I initiated the transfer, $2.2 million. It was a lot of money, but it was the price of a lesson, and this was going to be the most expensive lesson of Marcus's life. I watched the progress bar on the screen. Transfer complete. I sat back. The debt was mine now. My son belonged to me, not as a child but as a debtor, and I was going to collect. I looked at Ray. Turn on the scanner, I said. I want to hear the police bands, just in case he gets desperate. Ray flipped a switch. The room filled with the static and chatter of the city. We sat in the darkness listening to the sounds of a world that didn't care about fathers and sons. Somewhere across town, Tony was picking up his phone. Somewhere across town, Marcus was about to answer, and the game was about to change. I closed my eyes and waited for the scream. The living room of the mansion was quiet, but it was the kind of silence that vibrates with tension like a violin string pulled until it is about to snap. I sat in my old leather recliner in the corner, a blanket pulled up to my chin, my eyes closed. To anyone looking, I was just an old man napping the stress of the day, finally catching up to his frail body. I let my mouth hang open slightly and added a soft, rhythmic snore for effect. But beneath my eyelashes, I was watching. I was always watching. Marcus was pacing back and forth on the Persian rug, a rug I had paid for 3 years ago. He was chewing his fingernails down to the quick, his eyes darting to the window every time a car passed on the street outside. Vanessa sat on the sofa, a glass of wine in her hand, her knuckles white as she gripped the stem. She wasn't drinking. She was waiting. The house felt like a bunker before an air raid. They knew something was coming. They didn't know when, and they didn't know how hard it would hit, but they knew the bill for Marcus's sins was past due. It happened at exactly 9:45. The sound wasn't a knock. It was an explosion. The large bay window at the front of the house, the one that looked out onto the manicured lawn, shattered inward with a violence that shook the floorboards. Glass sprayed across the room like diamond shrapnel glittering in the light of the chandelier before embedding itself in the carpet and the furniture. A jagged rock the size of a grapefruit landed with a heavy thud in the center of the room, rolling until it hit the leg of the coffee table. Vanessa screamed. It was a high, piercing shriek that hurt my ears, but I didn't flinch. I stayed in my chair, my eyes still closed, my breathing steady. I was a statue in the middle of chaos. "What was that?" she yelled, dropping her wine glass. Red liquid splashed across the white sofa, looking disturbingly like blood. "Marcus, what is happening?" Marcus didn't answer. He ran to the window, his shoes crunching on the broken glass. He looked out into the darkness. I opened one eye, just a slit. I saw his face pale in the reflection of the remaining glass. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh God, no." "What is it?" Vanessa demanded, running to join him. She looked out. She gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. "My car," she shrieked. "My Porsche! Look what they did to my Porsche!" I shifted slightly in my chair, adjusting the angle of my phone, which was tucked into the fold of the blanket. The camera lens was peeking out just enough to catch the room. I had hit the record button the moment the glass broke. Marcus and Vanessa ran out the front door, leaving it wide open. The cold night wind rushed in, carrying the smell of snow and exhaust. I waited a beat, then stood up. My movements were quick and precise, shed of the old man persona. I walked to the window, avoiding the glass, and looked out. The driveway was illuminated by the security floods. Vanessa's white Porsche Cayenne, the car she loved more than she loved any human being, was ruined. Someone had taken a can of bright red spray paint and defaced it. On the hood, on the doors, on the windshield, one word was repeated over and over in jagged, dripping letters. Pay, pay, pay. It was brutal. It was ugly. It was perfect. Tony the loan shark was a man of his word. I had told him to turn up the heat, and he had set the kitchen on fire. I went back to my chair and sat down, resuming my pose just as they came storming back into the house. They slammed the door shut and locked it, throwing the deadbolt with a frantic desperation. They were soaking wet from the snow and shivering with rage. "Did you see that?" Vanessa screamed, turning on Marcus. "Did you see my car? It is ruined. That paint won't come off. That is a custom finish, Marcus. Who did this? Who are these people?" Marcus leaned against the door, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. He looked broken. "It is, Tony," he mumbled. "I told you. I owe him money, a lot of money." "I know you owe him money," Vanessa yelled, pacing the room, kicking shards of glass out of her way. "But you said you had time. You said you could handle it. You didn't tell me they were going to come here. You didn't tell me they were going to destroy my things. They are sending a message," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Next time it won't be the Carness. It will be us. It will be my fingers, or your face." Vanessa stopped pacing. She stood over him, her chest heaving. She looked down at her husband with a mixture of disgust and hatred that was chilling to behold. "You are useless," she hissed. "You are absolutely useless. I married you because you said you were going to be rich. I married you because you said you had a plan. And now look at us. We are trapped in a house with broken windows, hiding from gangsters while your senile father sleeps in the corner." She pointed at me. I kept my eyes closed, but I could feel her fingers stabbing the air in my direction. "He is the problem," she shrieked. "He is the reason we are in this mess." Marcus looked up. "How is it his fault?" "Because he is still alive," Vanessa roared, her voice cracking. I felt a chill go down my spine that had nothing to do with the open window. I made sure the phone was recording. This was it. This was the confession. "You told me he was sick," she continued, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You told me the stroke was massive. You said he had weeks, maybe months. You said the stress of the move would finish him off. I thought it would—" Marcus pleaded. "The doctor said his heart was weak." "The doctor was wrong." Vanessa spat. "Look at him. He is sleeping through a riot. He is indestructible. He is like a cockroach, Marcus. He just keeps living and breathing and eating up our inheritance." She walked over to my chair. I could feel her standing over me. I could smell her fear and her greed. "We have a $5 million policy on him," she whispered. $5 million, Marcus. Plus the house, plus the accounts. If he dies, we pay Tony tomorrow. We fix the car. We move to Europe. We are free. But he won't die. Marcus groaned from the floor. He is healthy as a horse. He just forgets things. Then we have to help him, she said. I held my breath. What do you mean? Marcus asked. I mean, we can't wait for nature to take its course, she said. Nature is taking too long. And Tony isn't going to wait. If we don't pay him by the weekend, we are dead. So it is either him or us, Marcus. Do you understand? It is him or us. I opened my eyes just a slit. I saw Marcus looking at her. He looked terrified, but he didn't look horrified. He wasn't rejecting the idea. He was considering it. We tried the Mexico plan, he said. He escaped. Mexico was a mistake, she said. Too complicated, too many moving parts. We need something simpler, something local. She looked around the room, her eyes landing on the broken window. A burglary, she mused. A break-in gone wrong. The gangsters. They already attacked the house, right? Who is to say they didn't come inside? Who is to say the old man didn't get in the way? Marcus stood up slowly. You want to frame Tony? Why not? She said, shrugging. He is a criminal. The police will believe it. We tell them Tony's guys broke in looking for you. Your dad tried to be a hero. Ideally, he falls down the stairs, or he has a heart attack from the fright. A real one this time. Marcus looked at me. I closed my eyes fully, letting my mouth fall open, letting out a soft snore. I was the picture of vulnerability, a helpless old man dreaming in his chair, while his children plotted his murder. I don't know, Ness, he whispered. That is murder. It is survival, she snapped. Do you want to lose your fingers? Do you want to lose me? Because I am telling you right now, Marcus, if we lose this house, if I have to drive a damaged car, I am leaving you. I didn't sign up for poverty. I signed up for the Freeman fortune. Marcus looked at her. He looked at the window. He looked at me. Okay, he said. Okay. But we can't do it here. Not with the window broken. The police will come to investigate the vandalism. We need to get him away. Where, she asked. San Francisco, he said. There is a specialist there, Dr. Aris. He is on the payroll. He writes scripts for anything. We take Dad there for a consultation. On the way, we find a spot. A scenic overlook. A quiet road. A road trip, she said, smiling. I like it. We leave tomorrow, Marcus said. Early, before the police come back. We tell them we are going to stay with friends until the window is fixed. And the old man, she asked. He goes with us, Marcus said. One last ride. They stood there in the silence of the ruined room, plotting the death of the man who had given them everything. I felt a profound sadness wash over me, not for myself, but for them. They were so lost, so consumed by their hunger for things they didn't earn that they had hollowed themselves out. They were empty shells filled with nothing but want. But beneath the sadness, the anger burned hot and bright. They wanted to take me for a ride. They wanted to find a quiet road. Fine, I would go for a ride, but I would be the one driving. Let's go to bed, Vanessa said, stepping over the broken glass. I am exhausted. What about the window? Marcus asked. Tape some cardboard over it, she said. It doesn't matter. We won't be living here much longer anyway. We are going to upgrade. Once the policy pays out, I want the penthouse downtown. They walked out of the room, leaving me alone in the dark. I waited until I heard their footsteps fade upstairs, until I heard the bedroom door close. I opened my eyes. I sat up. I reached into the blanket and pulled out the phone. I stopped the recording. I had it. Conspiracy to commit murder. Insurance fraud. It was all there in high-definition audio. I saved the file. I uploaded it to a secure server. Then I sent a copy to Ray. I sent a text message with it. They are taking me to San Francisco tomorrow. They plan to stage an accident. A moment later, Ray replied, I will have a tail on you. Do you want us to intercept? No, I typed back. Let them drive. Let them think they are in control. I want to see how far they will go. Otis. This is dangerous, Ray wrote. I am the danger, I replied. I put the phone back in my shoe. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked at the red paint on the Porsche. Pay. It was a prophecy. They were going to pay. They were going to pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment of disrespect. I went back to my chair and pulled the blanket up. I needed to rest. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind whistling through the broken glass. It sounded like a warning, but not for me. The morning sun did not bring hope. It brought a blinding headache-inducing glare that illuminated the wreckage of the living room. The shattered window was taped over with cardboard and duct tape, a pathetic bandage on a mortal wound. We were leaving. Vanessa had packed a bag, not for a vacation, but for a tactical retreat. She wore large sunglasses to hide the dark circles under her eyes, but she couldn't hide the tremor in her hands. She was scared. But fear makes people dangerous, and Vanessa was cornered. "We are going to see, Doctor." "Eris," she announced, her voice brisk and clinical as she shoved a piece of toast into my hand. "He is a specialist in San Francisco. He is going to evaluate you, Dad. He is going to get you the help you need." I knew what kind of help Dr. Eris provided. He was a signature for hire, a man who would look at a healthy mind and see dementia if the price was right. They were taking me to be declared incompetent. Once they had that paper, they didn't need me to sign anything. They would become my guardians. They would control the trust, the accounts, the house. And then I would simply fade away in some back room, heavily sedated until my heart actually stopped. Marcus threw my small suitcase into the trunk of the rental car he had picked up earlier, since the Porsche was a rolling billboard for his debt. He looked haggard. He was checking his phone every 30 seconds. I knew who he was waiting to hear from. Tony, the loan shark, or maybe his lawyer. Either way, he was a man walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. "Get in, Dad," he muttered, opening the back door. "It is a long drive." I climbed in. I moved slowly, exaggerating every ache and pain. I fumbled with the seatbelt until Vanessa sighed loudly and reached over to buckle it for me. Her perfume was cloying, masking the smell of her fear. We pulled out of the driveway. I looked back at the house. It looked like a skull, the taped-up window, an eye patch over a dead socket. I wondered if I would ever see it again. I wondered if I would die on the road to San Francisco. But I wasn't going to die today. I was the head of security, and I had a plan. The drive was tense. Marcus drove with a white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel, pushing the speedometer 10 miles over the limit. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat, texting furiously. I sat in the back, watching the landscape shift from the suburbs to the open highway. I waited until we were an hour out, until we were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dry hills and long stretches of asphalt. "Marcus," I said, my voice weak, "I have to go." "Go where?" he asked, eyes on the rearview mirror. "The bathroom," I said. "I have to use the bathroom." "We just left an hour ago, Dad," he snapped. "Hold it. We are making good time." I can't," I whined, clutching my stomach. "It hurts." "Please, son," he groaned. A loud, exasperated sound. He looked at Vanessa. She rolled her eyes. "Just stop, Marcus," she said. "If he wets himself in the rental car, we will have to pay a cleaning fee, and I am not sitting in the smell of urine for 4 hours. Marcus swerved into the next rest area. He slammed on the brakes. "Hurry up," he yelled. I took my time. I shuffled to the restroom. I stayed in there for 15 minutes. I washed my hands. I looked in the mirror. I wasn't the frail old man they saw. I was a hunter waiting for his shot. When I came back out, Marcus was pacing by the car, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. Finally, he spat. "Get in." We got back on the road. 20 minutes later, I did it again. "Marcus," I said. "What now?" he screamed. "I need water. My throat. It is so dry. I am coughing." "There is water in the back," Vanessa said without turning around. "I can't open the bottle," I said, feigning weakness in my fingers. "My hands. They won't work." Marcus slammed his hand on the steering wheel. He pulled over at a gas station. He got out, walked around to the back door, opened it, cracked the seal on the water bottle, and thrust it at me. "Here, drink, and shut up." I took a sip. I spilled a little on my chin. I looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. "Thank you, son." He slammed the door. I kept this up for 3 hours. The bladder game, the thirst game, the leg cramp game. Every 30 miles I made them stop. I was wearing them down. I was fraying their nerves. Marcus was vibrating with rage. He was checking his phone constantly. I could see the screen from the back seat, missed calls from unknown number, texts that were short and threatening. "Where is my money? Tick-tock, Marcus." He was losing his mind. And a man losing his mind makes mistakes. We pulled into a massive truck stop off I-5. It was a sprawling complex of diesel pumps, fast food joints, and idling 18-wheelers. The sun was high and hot. "I need to go again," I whispered. Marcus didn't even yell this time. He just veered off the highway. He parked near the pumps. "I am getting gas," he said, his voice dead. "Vanessa, take him inside. Get him a diaper if you have to. I am not stopping again." Vanessa sighed. She got out. She opened my door. "Come on, Otis," she said, grabbing my arm. As I climbed out, I looked at the front seat. Marcus was standing by the pump inserting his credit card. He had left his phone. It was sitting in the center console cup holder plugged into a charger. The screen was lit up with another notification. I walked with Vanessa toward the convenience store. She was walking fast, dragging me along. "Wait," I said, stopping. "My shoe. It is untied. I don't want to trip." She looked down. My shoe was indeed untied. I had done it myself while we were driving. "Ugh," she groaned. "Fix it. Quickly." I knelt down. It took me a long time. My fingers fumbled with the laces. While I was kneeling, I looked back at the car. Marcus was staring at the pump, watching the numbers tick up. He was distracted. He was stressed. Vanessa was tapping her foot, looking at the entrance of the store, annoyed that I was taking so long. She wasn't looking at the car. I stood up. "I did it," I said, smiling. We walked into the store. The smell of hot dogs and coffee hit me. "I need to use the restroom," I said. "Go," Vanessa said, pointing to the back. "I am going to get a coffee. Do not wander off." I walked to the restroom. I went inside. I counted to 10. Then I walked right back out. Vanessa was at the coffee counter, her back to me, arguing with the barista about almond milk. I slipped out the automatic doors. I walked back toward the car. Marcus was still at the pump, but he had turned his back to the vehicle. He was looking at a text on his Apple Watch. He was rubbing his temples. I moved fast, faster than an old man should. I reached the passenger side window, which was rolled down 3 inches to let out the heat. I reached in. My hand snaked into the center console. I grabbed the phone. I pulled it out. Marcus didn't turn around. He was muttering to himself, lost in his own nightmare. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. Running attracts attention. I shuffled, but I shuffled with purpose. I walked toward the line of massive semi-trucks idling in the back lot. Their engines were loud, masking the sound of my footsteps. I found a truck that was just revving up. The driver was climbing into the cab. It was a long-haul rig, license plates from Oregon. It was heading north, away from us, away from San Francisco. There was a large metal trash can near the truck stop entrance right next to where the truck was pulling out. I looked at the phone in my hand. It buzzed. Tony calling. I smiled. I didn't answer. I dropped the phone into the trash can. It landed with a hollow thud on top of a pile of greasy burger wrappers. The truck pulled out. Its massive wheels crushed a soda can on the pavement. It turned onto the on-ramp, picking up speed, heading north. I turned around and walked back to the convenience store. I walked inside just as Vanessa was putting a lid on her coffee. I walked up to her. "I am done," I said. She jumped. "Jesus, Otis, you are quiet for an old man." I washed my hands, I said. "Good," she said. "Let's go." Marcus is losing it. We walked back to the car. Marcus was just finishing up at the pump. He looked at us, his eyes tight. "Let's go," he said. "We are 2 hours behind schedule." I climbed into the back seat. Vanessa got in the front. Marcus got in the driver's seat. He put the car in gear. He reached for the cup holder. His hand grasped empty air. He frowned. He looked down. "Where is my phone?" he asked. Vanessa looked. "You had it when we stopped." "I left it right here," Marcus said, his voice rising. "It was charging." He looked under the seat. He looked in the door pocket. He looked on the floor mats. "It is gone," he whispered. "Maybe it fell between the seats," Vanessa suggested. He tore the car apart. He threw empty water bottles into the back seat. He ripped up the floor mats. "It is not here," he screamed. "It is not here." "Check your pockets," Vanessa said. I checked my pockets. "It was right here." He looked at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes were wild. "Did you take it?" he demanded. I blinked. "Take what, son?" "My phone." "My phone, you old bat. Did you take it?" I held up my empty hands. "I don't have a phone." "Marcus, you know that. You took mine. Remember?" He slammed his hands on the steering wheel. "Someone stole it," he yelled. "Someone reached in the window and stole it while I was pumping gas." "Call it," Vanessa said, pulling out her own phone. "Track it." Marcus grabbed her phone. He typed in his credentials with shaking fingers. He opened the Find My Phone app. The little dot appeared on the map. It wasn't at the gas station. It was moving. It was moving fast. It was on the highway heading north at 65 miles per hour. "It is on a truck," Marcus gasped. "Someone took it and they are driving away with it." He stared at the dot moving further and further away from him. "Tony," he whispered. "Tony is going to call. The lawyer is going to call. I can't." I can't answer. He looked at Vanessa, terror in his eyes. I have all my codes on there, he said. My bank access, my contacts, my GPS, everything. I am locked out, Vanessa. I am blind. Vanessa went pale. You idiot. You left it in the open. I was pumping gas, Marcus shrieked. We have to go back, she said. We have to chase it. It is going north, Marcus yelled, pointing at the map. We are going south. San Francisco is south. We can't turn around. We will miss the appointment with Dr. Aris. We will miss the deadline. He was hyperventilating. He was trapped between two disasters. If he chased the phone, he missed the doctor and lost the chance to commit me. If he went to the doctor, he lost his connection to the money he needed to save his life. He slammed the phone onto the dashboard. Forget it, he screamed. Forget the phone. We have to get to San Francisco. Once we get the power of attorney, I can buy a new phone. I can fix this. He put the car in gear and peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching, but he was driving blind. He didn't have his GPS, he didn't have his contacts, and most importantly, he didn't have his tether to the master he served. I sat in the back seat and watched the back of his head. He was sweating, he was shaking, he thought he had lost a phone. He didn't know he had just lost the war. The silence in the car was heavy. Marcus was gripping the wheel so hard I thought it might snap. Vanessa was staring out the window, biting her lip. I closed my eyes and feigned sleep. But in my mind, I was smiling. Phase 1, complete. Now, for the breakdown. The rental car was a dead metal box in the middle of nowhere. The engine had sputtered and died 10 miles ago, leaving us stranded on a forgotten stretch of highway surrounded by a dense forest of pine trees. The snow was falling heavier now, thick, wet flakes that piled up on the windshield and turned the world outside into a monochromatic nightmare. Inside the car, the temperature was plummeting. The only heat came from our bodies and the simmering rage that was about to boil over. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. He had tried to start the car 20 times. Each time the engine would crank weakly and then die a sound like a dying animal. He didn't know why it wouldn't start. He didn't know that back at the truck stop while he was screaming about his lost phone, I had popped the hood and loosened the spark plug wires just enough so they would rattle loose after an hour of driving. Vanessa sat next to him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, shivering in her thin coat. She had stopped checking her phone hours ago when the battery died. Now she was just staring out into the darkness, her face a mask of pure hatred. "This is it," she whispered, her voice cutting through the silence. "This is how it ends. We are going to freeze to death in a rental car with your senile father." "Shut up, Vanessa," Marcus snapped, his voice ragged. "I am thinking." "Thinking," she laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. "You haven't had a thought in your life, Marcus. You lost your phone, you got us lost, and now you broke the car. You are useless." "I didn't break the car," he yelled, slamming his hand on the dashboard. "It is a piece of junk, and I didn't get us lost. The GPS on your phone said this was a shortcut." "My phone died," she screamed, "because you wouldn't stop calling the bank, trying to hack into your own accounts." I sat in the back seat, wrapped in my coat, my eyes closed, listening. I was cold, yes, but I had been colder. I had spent nights on stakeouts in the desert, nights in the mountains, hunting fugitives. Cold was just a sensation. Betrayal was a wound. "I need to get out of here," Vanessa said, her voice rising in pitch. "I can't take this anymore. I can't take you. I can't take him." She turned in her seat and looked at me. I kept my breathing shallow, my head lolling to the side as if I were asleep. "Look at him," she spat. "He is sleeping. He doesn't even know we are in trouble. He is probably dreaming about his stupid pie. He is sick," Vanessa, Marcus said, defending me, but only because he still needed my signature. "He is a burden," she corrected. "He is a millstone around our necks. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't be here. We would be in Cabo. We would be rich. We will be rich," Marcus said, his voice desperate. "Once we get to San Francisco, once we see Dr. Aris." "San Francisco is 300 miles away," Vanessa shouted, "and we are stuck in a snowbank. We aren't making it, Marcus. The deadline is tomorrow. Tony is going to kill you, and then he is going to come for me." Marcus put his head on the steering wheel. "I know," he whispered. "I know." There was a long silence. The wind howled outside, shaking the car slightly. Then Vanessa spoke again. Her voice was different now, lower, darker. "We don't have to go to San Francisco," she said. What Marcus asked, lifting his head. "We don't need the doctor," she said. "We don't need the paper." Marcus turned to look at her. What are you talking about? The insurance, she whispered. The accidental death policy. It pays double if it is an accident. Yeah, so Marcus said. So this is an accident, she said, gesturing to the frozen world outside. Car trouble, middle of nowhere. Old man wanders off, gets lost in the woods, freezes to death. Marcus stared at her. You mean, leave him here? I mean, help him along, she said. My heart stopped. I lay perfectly still. We opened the door, she continued, her voice devoid of emotion. We walk him into the trees, just a little ways, enough so he can't find the road. We take his coat. We take his shoes. Vanessa. Marcus gasped. That is murder. It is survival, she hissed. It is him or us, Marcus. Do you want to die? Do you want Tony to cut you into pieces? Because that is what is going to happen, unless we come back with a death certificate. Marcus looked at me in the rearview mirror. I kept my eyes closed. I prayed he would say no. I prayed he would find some shred of humanity. But he didn't say no. He didn't say yes either. He just breathed heavy, ragged breaths. It would be quick, she said, pushing him. He is old. His heart is weak. The cold will stop it in minutes. He won't even feel it. He will just go to sleep. Marcus looked back at the woods. It is dark, he whispered. We have a flashlight, she said. Come on, Marcus. Be a man. Do what needs to be done. She reached for the door handle. I am sick of this family, she said. I am sick of waiting. Let's just kill him and be done with it. Who is going to know? The lock clicked. The cold air rushed in. I opened my eyes. I sat up straight. I shed the persona of the invalid like a snake shedding its skin. I looked into the rearview mirror. My eyes locked with Marcus's. He froze. He saw the change. He saw the clarity. He saw the father who used to check under his bed for monsters. Then I looked at Vanessa. She was halfway out the door. You are going to need a shovel, I said. My voice wasn't raspy. It was deep and strong, the voice of the head of security. Vanessa screamed. She jumped back into the car, slamming the door. She stared at me, her eyes bulging. You are awake, she stammered. I was never asleep, I said. Marcus turned around in his seat. Dad, he whispered. You heard. I heard everything I said. I heard about Mexico. I heard about the pills. I heard about Tony. And I just heard your wife suggest you strip me naked and leave me to freeze in the woods. Vanessa pressed herself against the dashboard, trying to get as far away from me as possible. You are faking, she hissed. You aren't sick. You aren't senile. No, I said. I am not. Then why? Marcus shouted. Why did you let us do this? Why did you get on the plane? To see, I said simply. To see if there was anything left in you worth saving. And Marcus asked, his voice trembling. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had considered killing me to pay a gambling debt. I found my answer, I said. Vanessa laughed a high, hysterical sound. So what? You are awake. You are still an old man. You are still stuck here with us. And we are still 2 against 1. She looked at Marcus. Do it, she screamed. Do it now. He knows. We can't let him go back. If he goes back, we go to jail. Kill him, Marcus. Marcus looked at me. He looked at his hands. I can't, he whispered. Coward, she yelled. Give me the tire iron. I will do it myself. She reached under the seat. She pulled out a heavy steel tire iron. She turned to face me, raising it high. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. Put it down, Vanessa, I said. Or what, she sneered. You going to call the police? You don't have a phone? I reached into my shoe. I pulled out the Nokia. I have this, I said. She froze. And I have friends, I added. I pressed a button. Speed dial 1. Ray, I said into the phone. Now. Suddenly the woods exploded with light. High beams cut through the trees from every direction, blinding them. 4 massive black SUVs rolled out of the forest road surrounding our crippled rental car. Men in tactical gear jumped out. They had rifles. They had lights. Police Marcus screamed, covering his face. Not police, I said. Better. The door to the rental car was ripped open. A large man grabbed the tire iron from Vanessa's hand and tossed it into the snow. Another man pulled Marcus out of the driver's seat. Ray walked up to the car. He looked at me. You okay, Otis? He asked. I am fine, Ray, I said, climbing out of the back seat. My legs were stiff, but I stood tall. I looked at Marcus and Vanessa shivering in the snow, surrounded by my private security team. They looked small. They looked pathetic. Who are these people? Vanessa shrieked. Who are you? I walked up to her. I leaned in close. I am the man you tried to kill, I said, and these are the people who work for me. Marcus looked at the SUVs. He looked at the men. He looked at me. You have a security team, he whispered. I have an army, son, I said. I built an empire while you were building debt. I turned to Ray. Get me out of here, I said. What about them? Ray asked, gesturing to Marcus and Vanessa. I looked at them. I looked at the son who had betrayed me. I looked at the woman who had poisoned his soul. Leave them, I said. Leave us, Marcus cried. Dad, you can't. We will freeze. You have a car, I said, and you have each other. That is what you wanted, right? But the car is broken, he wailed. Fix it, I said. You are a smart boy. Or start walking. It is only... What did you say, Vanessa? 300 miles to San Francisco. I walked toward Ray's SUV. Dad, please. Marcus begged, falling to his knees in the snow. Tony. The deadline. If I don't pay him... I stopped. I turned back. I paid Tony, I said. Marcus blinked. You paid him. I bought your debt, I said. You don't owe Tony anymore. You owe me. Marcus let out a sob of relief. Thank God. Thank God. So we are okay. No, I said. We are not okay. I pointed a finger at him. You owe me $2 million, Marcus. And I am not a patient creditor. I am going to take everything. The house, the cars, the accounts. I am going to strip you bare. But you are my father. I was your father, I said. Now I am just the man who owns you. I got into the SUV. Ray slammed the door. We drove away, leaving them in the dark, leaving them in the cold, leaving them with nothing but the wreckage of their own choices. I didn't look back. The road ahead was clear, and for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I was going. Home. The door of the rental car clicked open, and the sound was like a gunshot in the frozen silence of the forest. I stepped out onto the snow-covered road. I did not groan. I did not shuffle. I did not reach for the door frame to steady myself with the trembling hand of a man recovering from a stroke. I placed my feet firmly on the icy asphalt and stood up. I straightened my spine, unlocking the vertebrae I had kept hunched for days. I rolled my shoulders back, shedding the posture of the invalid and assuming the stance of the man who had once thrown cheaters through plate glass windows on the Las Vegas Strip. The cold air bit at my face, but I welcomed it. It felt clean. It felt like the truth. I walked around to the front of the car where the headlights cut 2 yellow cones into the darkness. I turned and faced the windshield. Inside, Marcus and Vanessa sat frozen like statues, their faces pale and ghostly behind the glass. They were staring at me with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. They had spent weeks treating me like a piece of furniture, like a broken appliance that needed to be thrown out. Now they were looking at the man who had built the house they lived in, and they were realizing for the first time that the foundation was made of concrete, not sand. Get out, I said. My voice was not the raspy whisper I had used since the plane. It was deep. It was resonant. It was the voice that had commanded security teams and negotiated with unions. It carried through the glass and the steel of the car. They didn't move. They were paralyzed by the cognitive dissonance. Their brains couldn't reconcile the father they thought they knew with the stranger standing in the snow. Get out! I roared, my voice booming off the pine trees. Marcus flinched. He fumbled for the door handle. He pushed his door open and stumbled out into the snow, almost falling. Vanessa followed him, wrapping her thin coat around herself, her teeth chattering violently. They stood by the hood of the car, shivering, looking small and pathetic against the backdrop of the towering forest. Dad, Marcus stammered, his voice thin and reedy. Dad, what is happening? You are standing up straight. Your speech, it is fine. I looked at him. I looked at the son I had raised, the boy I had protected from the world until he decided he wanted to eat me alive. I looked at Vanessa, the woman who had poisoned his mind and tried to poison my body. I am not sick, Marcus. I said, my words cutting through the cold air like a knife. I am not crazy. I am not senile. I don't have dementia. And I certainly didn't have a stroke. Marcus took a step back, his boots crunching on the ice. But the doctor, the symptoms. You were drooling, Dad. You couldn't remember my name. I was acting, I said, stepping closer to him. I was watching, I was listening. I wanted to see what you would do when you thought no one was looking. I wanted to see who you really were when the lights went out. I turned my gaze to Vanessa. She shrank back under the weight of my stare. And you showed me, I said. You showed me everything. I heard you on the plane, Vanessa. I heard you talking about the one-way ticket. I heard you in the kitchen mixing those blue pills into my soup. I saw you poison the dog. Vanessa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You knew. I knew everything I said. I knew about the nursing home in Tijuana. I knew about the fake passport. I knew about the insurance policy. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the white pill I had saved, the one I had hidden under my tongue. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger. Digoxin, I said. A heart medication. But in a high enough dose for a man my age without a heart condition, it causes cardiac arrest. It looks like a natural death. That was the plan for tonight, wasn't it? If the cold didn't kill me, you were going to force-feed me this. Vanessa started to cry. It wasn't a cry of remorse. It was the cry of a cornered rat. It wasn't me, she sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at Marcus. It was him. He owes the money. He is the one who is scared of Tony. I just tried to help him. You liar, Marcus screamed, turning on her. You came up with the Mexico plan. You bought the pills. You told me to leave him in the woods. They started screaming at each other, their voices shrill and ugly in the quiet night. They were tearing each other apart, just like I knew they would. When the money is gone and the danger is real, the rats always eat each other. Silence, I shouted. They stopped panting, their breath mingling in the air. I don't care whose idea it was, I said. You both signed on. You both drove the car. You both walked me to the edge of the grave. Marcus looked at me, tears streaming down his face. Dad, please. I was desperate. Tony was going to kill me. I didn't want to hurt you. I needed the money. You didn't want to hurt me, I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You left me in a hospital bed. You tried to drug me. You were going to leave me in these woods to freeze to death, Marcus. You were going to let the coyotes eat your father so you could keep your fingers. I stepped into his personal space. I was taller than him now that I was standing straight. I loomed over him. You aren't a son, I said. You are a failed investment, and I am liquidating my assets. Marcus fell to his knees in the snow. He grabbed the hem of my coat. Dad, please, he begged. Don't leave us here. It is freezing. We will die. I looked down at him. I felt nothing. The love I had carried for 40 years, the protective instinct that defines a father, had been cauterized. You won't die, I said. You are young, you have adrenaline, and you have each other. Isn't that what you wanted? To be together, rich and free of the old man. Well, I said, kicking his hand away from my coat. The old man is leaving. Suddenly, the darkness of the forest was shattered by blinding white light. 4 sets of high beams cut through the trees, illuminating the road like a stadium. The low rumble of heavy engines filled the air. Marcus and Vanessa shielded their eyes, screaming. What is that? Marcus yelled. Who is that? My ride, I said. A convoy of black SUVs rolled out of the darkness surrounding the rental car. They were massive armored vehicles, the kind used by government agencies and high-level security firms. The doors opened in unison. 6 men stepped out. They were dressed in tactical black gear. They didn't look like police. They looked like soldiers. They moved with a silent, deadly precision, forming a perimeter around us. A man stepped out of the lead vehicle. He was wearing a long trench coat and a fedora. He walked with a limp, but he moved fast. Ray. He walked up to me, his eyes scanning Marcus and Vanessa with the cold detachment of a man who had seen everything. Package secured? Ray asked, his voice like gravel. Package secured, I said. Ray looked at Marcus. So this is the boy. Marcus looked up at Ray, terrified. Who are you? I am the guy your dad hired to save your life, Ray said, and frankly I think he overpaid. Ray turned to me. The car is warm, Otis. We have coffee. And we have the files you asked for. Thank you, Ray, I said. I turned back to Marcus and Vanessa. They were huddled together, shivering, their faces blue with cold and shock. Dad, Marcus whispered. You can't just leave us. The car is broken. I know, I said. I broke it. I pulled the spark plug wires. It is an easy fix if you know what you are doing. But you never bothered to learn anything about cars, did you, Marcus? You just liked to drive them fast. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small piece of plastic. It was the spark plug wire clip. I dropped it in the snow at his feet. Figure it out, I said. I started walking toward the SUV. Ray held the door open for me. The interior looked warm, inviting. It looked like safety. "Wait," Vanessa screamed, running toward me. "Wait, you can't leave us here. It is murder." One of Ray's men stepped in front of her, blocking her path. He didn't touch her. He just stood there, a wall of muscle and indifference. She stopped, backing away, whimpering. I stopped at the door of the SUV. I turned around one last time. "It is not murder," I said. "It is a field trip." I pointed down the long, dark road that wound through the mountains. "It is 20 miles to the nearest town," I said. "If you start walking now, you might make it by sunrise." "Walking?" Marcus gasped. "In the snow." "You wanted a workout, Marcus," I said. "You always said you wanted to get in shape." I climbed into the SUV. I sat down on the leather seat. I felt the warmth of the heater wrap around me. "Start walking," I said. "Consider it exercise." I slammed the door. The lock clicked shut. The sound was final. Ray got into the driver's seat. He looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Ready, boss?" he asked. "Ready," I said. The convoy began to move. We pulled away from the broken rental car. We pulled away from the two figures standing in the snow. I didn't look back. I didn't watch them in the mirror. I picked up the thermos of coffee Ray had left for me. I poured a cup. My hand was steady. I took a sip. It was hot and black. We drove into the night, leaving the forest behind, leaving the past behind. I had a lot of work to do. I had a house to clean out. I had a will to rewrite. But for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. The predator was gone. The trap had been sprung. And the old lion was going home. The sun was just beginning to bleed over the horizon as Ray's black SUV crossed the city limits. The skyline of Las Vegas, usually a symbol of excess and noise, looked different to me this morning. It looked like a chessboard, and I was about to remove the pawns. I hadn't slept. I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline that had fueled my escape in the woods had settled into a cold, hard block of resolve in the pit of my stomach. I looked at my hands resting on my knees. They were steady. The tremor I had faked for months was gone. The weakness was gone. I was Otis Jefferson, head of security, and I was clocking in for the most important shift of my life. Ray glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Where to, boss?" he asked, his voice gravelly from the long drive. "First National," I said. "The main branch. Call Henderson. Tell him to meet us at the back door." We arrived at the bank before the doors opened to the public. Henderson, the manager who had helped me with the safe deposit box ruse, was waiting. He looked tired, but when he saw me step out of the SUV alive and upright, he let out a breath he must have been holding for 2 days. We walked straight to his office. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I sat down and placed the burner phone on his desk. "Freeze it," I said. Henderson nodded, reaching for his keyboard. "Which accounts, Otis?" Everything I said. The joint checking, the savings, the trust distributions, the credit cards, especially the cards. I want Marcus stripped. I want him to try to buy a pack of gum and get declined. I watched Henderson type. The keystrokes were like gunshots. With every click, a piece of my son's artificial life was being dismantled. "I need to revoke the power of attorney," I continued. "I will need a legal affidavit for that," Henderson said. "It is coming," I said. "But for now, flag the accounts for fraud." He forged my signature on loan documents. He accessed my safe deposit box under false pretenses. That is enough to put a hold on everything, right? More than enough. Henderson said, hitting enter. "Done. His access is revoked. The cards are bricked. The assets are frozen." I leaned back in the chair. I imagined Marcus somewhere on a cold highway trying to use his phone, trying to use a card, realizing that the well had run dry. It wasn't enough. "Get me the legal department," I said. I spent the next 3 hours with the bank's lawyers and a team Ray had assembled. We drafted affidavits, we filed emergency motions, I signed document after document, my true signature flowing strong and sharp across the paper. Thaddeus Otis Jefferson. Not the shaky scrawl of a dying man, but the autograph of a man reclaiming his empire. I filed formal accusations of forgery. I filed a report for the attempted theft of the safe deposit contents. By noon, Marcus wasn't just broke, he was a wanted man in the financial world. His credit score was about to become a crater. "Now take me home," I told Ray. We drove to the mansion, my house, the house I had let them live in, the house they had turned into a prison for me. It stood on the hill looking majestic and serene, unaware of the rot inside. I didn't have my keys, they had taken them. But I didn't need keys. I had Ray and two of his biggest security guards. "Open it," I said, pointing to the front door. One of the guards, a man named Tiny, who was anything but used a specialized tool to bump the lock. It took 5 seconds. We walked in. The house smelled of them. Vanessa's cloying perfume. Marcus's expensive cologne. It smelled of betrayal. "Secure the perimeter," I ordered. Ray's men moved through the house, checking rooms, clearing corners as if we were in a war zone. In a way, we were. I walked to the kitchen. I saw the bowl of soup shattered on the floor where I had dropped it. I saw the stain on the tile. It looked like dried blood. I walked to the garage. I saw the bucket I had sat on. I saw the dog bed. I felt a flash of heat, a burning anger that threatened to consume me. They had put me here. They had treated me like an animal. "Call the locksmith," I told Ray. "I want every lock changed. Front, back, garage, windows. Everything. And get the movers," Ray asked. "You heard me. I want every single thing that belongs to Marcus and Vanessa out of my house. Every stitch of clothing, every piece of furniture they bought with my money, every picture frame. I want it all out." "But where do we put it?" Ray asked. "The curb," I said, walking back to the living room. "Put it on the curb. It is trash day, isn't it?" The rest of the day was a blur of activity. The locksmith drilled out the old cores and installed high-security deadbolts. The movers arrived and began the purge. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one they hadn't managed to throw out yet, and watched. I watched them carry out Marcus's golf clubs. I watched them carry out Vanessa's collection of designer handbags. I watched them strip the sheets off the bed where they had slept while planning my death. It was ruthless, it was cold, and it was absolutely necessary. By sunset, the house was silent. The locks were new. The alarm codes were changed. And on the sidewalk outside the front gate lay a mountain of personal effects. It looked like the wreckage of a life because it was. I posted the guards at the gate. If they show up, I told Tiny, do not let them in. If they try to force their way, call the police. If they scream, let them scream, but they do not set 1 foot on this property. I stood by the window in the master bedroom watching the street. The sun went down. The streetlights flickered on. It was nearly midnight when I saw them. They didn't drive up in a luxury car. They didn't even take a taxi. They were walking. They looked like refugees from a war they had started. Marcus was limping, his suit torn and stained with mud. Vanessa was trailing behind him, missing a shoe, hobbling on one bare foot wrapped in a rag. They had walked for miles. They had probably hitched rides on trucks. They looked exhausted, frozen and broken. They stopped at the gate. They looked at the house. The lights were on, warm and inviting. They probably thought the nightmare was over. They probably thought they could sneak in, come up with a lie, tell me they had been carjacked, spin some new web of deceit. Marcus reached for the keypad. He punched in the code. Nothing happened. The light on the pad blinked angry red. He tried again. Red. He rattled the gate. Locked. Then he looked down. He saw the pile on the curb. He saw his suits in a heap on the wet pavement. He saw Vanessa's vanity table lying on its side, the mirror cracked. He froze. Vanessa caught up to him. She grabbed the bars of the gate, shaking them. "Open it!" she screamed, her voice raspy and thin. "Open the goddamn gate!" Suddenly the floodlights snapped on, blinding them. They threw their hands up, shielding their eyes. I stepped out onto the balcony. I was wearing my silk robe, holding a cup of hot tea. I looked down at them from the height of my fortress. They squinted up at me. Dad, Marcus croaked. "Dad, is that you?" "Hello, Marcus," I said, my voice amplified by the silence of the night. "Dad let us in," he begged, falling against the gate. We were attacked. The car broke down. We walked for hours." "Please, open the gate." "The gate is closed, Marcus," I said. "Permanently." "What?" Vanessa shrieked. "What are you talking about? This is our house." "It is my house," I corrected her. "You were just guests, and you have been evicted." "You can't do this," Marcus yelled, panic rising in his voice. "My stuff is out here. It is ruining. It is going to rain." "It is just stuff, Marcus," I said. "You can buy more." "Oh, wait. You can't." I froze the accounts. He stared at me, his mouth open. You froze them. Everything I said. You don't have a dime, son. You don't have a home. You don't have a car. You have nothing." "But why?" he wailed. "Why are you doing this? Because you tried to kill me, I said simply. No, we didn't, Vanessa shouted, lying even now. We were taking you to a doctor. I know about the pills, Vanessa, I said. I know about the brochure for the hospice in Tijuana. I know about the insurance policy. I know everything. Silence fell over the street. The denial died in their throats. They knew I knew. Go away, I said. Take your trash and go. Where Marcus whispered. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, I said, turning my back on them. Maybe you can find a garage somewhere. I walked back inside and closed the balcony doors, locking them tight. I drew the curtains. I could still hear them screaming for a while. Marcus banging on the gate, Vanessa shrieking obscenities. But eventually the cold and the exhaustion won. The screaming stopped. I looked at the monitors. I saw them gathering armfuls of their clothes, trying to cover themselves against the wind. I saw them walking down the street carrying what was left of their lives in their arms. They were alone. They were destitute. But I didn't feel safe yet. Not really. Because a rat is most dangerous when it is cornered. I picked up the phone and called Ray. They are here, I said. They just left. Where are they going? Ray asked. I don't know. But Ray, keep eyes on them. They are desperate. And Marcus, he still owes that money to the cartel. I know, Ray said. The wolves are circling Otis. Let them circle, I said. I hung up. I sat in my chair in the quiet house. I was the king of my castle again. But the war wasn't over. The next phase was about to begin. And this time, I wasn't just defending my home. I was hunting. The fall of Vanessa started not with a scream, but with the quiet beep of a security badge that no longer worked. I watched from the back of Ray's tinted sedan parked across the street from St. Jude's Hospital. It was the same hospital where she had tried to convince doctors to let me die. Now it was the scene of her professional execution. I had sent the package to the hospital board that morning. It contained the digital inventory logs Ray had hacked, proving she had been diverting controlled substances for months. It contained the chemical analysis of the blue pills she had tried to feed me. And it contained the audio recording of her discussing how to make my death look like natural causes. Hospitals do not like liability. They do not like pharmacists who steal narcotics, and they certainly do not like employees who plot murder on company time. I saw the glass doors slide open. 2 security guards, the real kind, not the mall cops, flanked Vanessa. She wasn't walking with her usual strut. She was being escorted. She was carrying a small cardboard box, the universal symbol of corporate termination. She looked furious. Her face twisted into a mask of indignation as she argued with the guards, but they simply pointed to the sidewalk and turned their backs. She was banned. Her license was flagged. Her career, the prestige she clung to so tightly, was gone in a single afternoon. She stood on the curb, shivering in the cold wind, her expensive coat looking out of place against the gray concrete. She pulled out her phone and dialed. I knew who she was calling. She was calling Marcus. She was looking for a lifeboat because her ship had just sunk. I signaled Ray to drive. We followed her not to help, but to witness the end. She took a taxi to the sleazy motel on the outskirts of town where she and Marcus had been forced to retreat after I evicted them from my mansion. It was a place where the neon signs buzzed like dying flies, and the sheets were never quite clean. It was a fitting palace for the king and queen of deception. We parked in the shadows. I rolled down the window just enough to hear. The walls of these motels are paper thin, and Vanessa was not known for being quiet when she was angry. She kicked the door of room 104 open. I could see Marcus sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, staring at the stained carpet. He looked up as she stormed in, throwing her box of belongings onto the floor. The contents spilled out a stethoscope, a framed photo of herself, and a few stolen prescription pads. "They fired me," she screamed. Her voice was raw, tearing through the thin drywall. "They marched me out like a criminal, Marcus. They said I stole drugs. They said I was a liability." Marcus stood up, his face pale and unshaven. He looked like a man who had been awake for 3 days, which he probably had. "Vanessa, calm down," he said, reaching for her. "We can fix this. We can sue them for wrongful termination. Sue them." She laughed, a harsh, hysterical sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "With what money, Marcus? With what lawyer? Your accounts are frozen. My accounts are frozen. And now I have no job. I have no income. Do you understand what that means? It means we are destitute." She paced the small room, kicking the cheap furniture. She was a caged animal lashing out at the only thing she could reach. "It is your father," she hissed. "He did this. He sent them the files. He is ruining us piece by piece." "He is just angry," Marcus mumbled, trying to defend the indefensible. "He will calm down. He just needs time." "He is not going to calm down," she yelled, getting right in his face. "He is hunting us, and you are just sitting here letting it happen. You are weak, Marcus. You have always been weak." "I am not weak," he protested, his voice rising. I tried to get the money. I tried to handle Tony. And you failed," she cut him off. "You failed at everything. You failed to get the house. You failed to get the insurance. And now you have failed to protect me." She stopped pacing. She took a deep breath, and the air in the room seemed to change. It went from hot rage to cold calculation. I knew that look. It was the same look she had on the plane right before she told Marcus to leave me in Mexico. "I am done," she said, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Done with what Marcus asked," blinking. "Done with this. Done with you. I want a divorce." Marcus staggered back as if she had punched him. "Divorce," he whispered. "Vanessa, honey, you are just stressed. We are in this together. We are partners." "We were partners when there was $5 million on the table," she said, her eyes hard as diamonds. "Now there is nothing but debt and warrants. I am not going down with you, Marcus. I am not going to prison for your gambling debts. I am cutting my losses." She walked over to the dresser where she had thrown her purse. She pulled out a cigarette and lit it, her hands shaking slightly. "I want half," she said, blowing smoke into the stale air of the room. "Half of what Marcus asked," his voice trembling. "Half of the assets," she said. "The house, the cars, the offshore accounts you told me about. I know you have money stashed away, Marcus. You told me you skimmed from the firm for years. I want my share. I want a settlement, and then I never want to see your pathetic face again." Marcus stared at her. He started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound of a man whose mind was finally snapping under the weight of reality. He laughed until he was choking, until tears ran down his face. "Money," he wheezed. "You think there is money?" "Stop laughing," she snapped. "Give me the access codes. There are no codes." Marcus screamed. "There is no money, Vanessa. Don't you get it? I didn't skim anything. I lost it all. Every cent. The gambling, the crypto. It is all gone." Vanessa froze. Her cigarette burned down toward her fingers, but she didn't move. "And the house?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "The mansion." "We own the mansion." "We don't own anything," Marcus cried. "It is all in his name, the deed, the title, the cars, even the furniture. It is all Otis. I lied to you. I lied to everyone. I thought I could fix it before you found out. I thought once he died I would inherit it all and make it real." He fell to his knees on the dirty carpet, grasping at her legs. "I have nothing, Vanessa. I am negative $2 million. I am a fraud. But I have you. Please tell me I still have you." Vanessa looked down at him. She looked at the man she had married not for love but for a lifestyle. She looked at the man who was now useless to her. The disgust on her face was absolute. She didn't see a husband. She saw a bad investment. "You have nothing," she repeated. "Nothing," he sobbed. She kicked him away. She didn't do it gently. She kicked him hard in the chest, sending him sprawling backward into the nightstand. "Then you are worthless to me," she said. She grabbed her suitcase. She didn't bother packing. She just grabbed the few expensive items she had left. Her jewelry box, her designer bag. She moved with a terrifying speed. "Where are you going?" Marcus cried, trying to stand up. "I am leaving," she said, walking to the door. "And I am not walking." She opened the door of the motel room. Outside, waiting in the parking lot, was a silver Mercedes convertible. The engine was running. Behind the wheel sat a man. He was younger than Marcus, tanned, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. He looked like a tennis pro or a pharmaceutical rep. Someone flashy. Someone shallow. Marcus scrambled to the door. "Who is that?" he yelled. "That is Chad," she said, pausing at the threshold. "He is a rep for the supplier I used to work with. He has been supportive. Unlike you. You were cheating on me," Marcus whispered. "While I was trying to save us, you were cheating on me." "I was hedging my bets," she said coldly. "And it looks like I picked the winner." She walked out to the car. The man named Chad leaned over and opened the door for her. She threw her bag in the back and slid into the leather seat. She didn't look back at the motel room. She didn't look back at the husband she had conspired to commit murder with. She looked forward toward a new victim, toward a new scam. Marcus ran out into the parking lot barefoot in the cold. "Vanessa," he screamed. "Don't leave me. They are going to kill me. Tony is coming for me." The Mercedes revved its engine. Vanessa put on her sunglasses. She said something to Chad, and he laughed. The car peeled out of the lot, tires screeching, leaving Marcus standing in a cloud of exhaust fumes. He stood there for a long time. He looked at the empty road. He looked at his bare feet. He looked at the sky. He was alone, completely and utterly alone. His wife was gone. His money was gone. His father was gone. I watched him from the sedan. I saw his shoulders shake. I saw him collapse onto the asphalt, weeping into his hands. It was a pitiful sight. But I felt no pity. Pity is for victims. Marcus was an architect of his own ruin. He had built a life on lies, and now the foundation had crumbled. Ray looked at me. "That is cold Otis," he said quietly. "Even for you. He chose this." "Ray," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "He chose her over me. He chose greed over blood. Now he has neither." I watched Marcus crawl back into the motel room and close the door. He was safe from the cold for now, but he wasn't safe from the truth. And he certainly wasn't safe from the debt he still owed. "Tony is still out there," I said. "And Tony doesn't accept tears as payment." "Should we call it in?" Ray asked. "Not yet," I said. "Let him sit in that room for a night. Let him stare at the walls. Let him realize that he is truly alone in this world." I signaled Ray to drive. As we pulled away, I looked back at the flickering neon sign of the Starlight Motel. It was the end of the line for Marcus Stanton. But for me, it was just another step toward justice. The house was clean. The rat had fled the ship. Now all that was left was the captain sinking with his vessel, and tomorrow the sharks would come to feed. The night was black and thick with rain as Marcus huddled in the back seat of his car, which was now his home, parked in the dark corner of a desolate truck stop. He was shivering, wrapped in a thin blanket he had stolen from the motel laundry room before Vanessa left him. He was dreaming of a warm bed, of a hot meal, of a life he had destroyed with his own hands when the glass shattered. The rear window exploded inward, showering him with shards of safety glass. Before he could scream, a hand reached in and unlocked the door. Two men dragged him out into the rain. They were big, silent, and efficient. They didn't speak. They just threw a hood over his head and shoved him into the back of a van. Marcus screamed, but the sound was muffled by the heavy canvas. He felt the van lurch forward, tires spinning on the wet pavement. He was being taken. He knew who it was. Tony. The debt had come due. I was sitting in my study staring at the fire when the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I knew who it was, too. Ray had warned me that Tony was getting impatient. I picked up the receiver, my hand steady, my heart cold. "Mr. Jefferson," a voice said, smooth and dangerous. "We have something that belongs to you." I took a sip of my brandy. "I don't think so," I said. "Oh, I have everything I need right here." "We have your son," the voice said. "Marcus. He is a little worse for wear, but he is breathing. For now." I paused. I looked at the fire. I pictured Marcus in that van, terrified, alone, realizing that his arrogance had led him straight to hell. "He owes us $2 million, the voice continued. "Plus interest. We want it tonight, or we start sending him back to you in pieces." I leaned back in my chair. "He is a grown man," I said, my voice flat. "He makes his own decisions. He makes his own debts. He is your son," the voice said, losing some of its smoothness. "You are rich. $2 million is nothing to you." "It is not about the money," I said. "It is about the principle. I don't negotiate with terrorists, and I certainly don't pay the debts of traitors." There was a silence on the line. A stunned silence. They had expected a panicked father. They had expected a checkbook. They didn't expect a wall. "He is going to die, old man," the voice snarled. "Do you hear me? We will kill him." "Then do what you have to do," I said. "I don't have a son named Marcus. My son died a long time ago." I hung up. I sat there in the silence of my study, listening to the crackle of the fire. My hand was shaking now just a little. It was a gamble. A terrible, dangerous gamble. But I knew Tony. He was a businessman, not a butcher. He wouldn't kill the golden goose unless he was sure there were no more eggs. By refusing to pay, I had just made Marcus worthless to him as a hostage, but valuable as a bargaining chip. Or so I hoped. But I wasn't going to leave it to chance. I picked up the other phone, the secure line Ray had set up. "They have him," I said. "I know," Ray replied instantly. "We tracked the van. They are heading to a warehouse in the industrial district." "Sector 4. Call the FBI," I said. "Tell them we have a kidnapping in progress. Give them the location, but tell them to wait." "Wait," Ray asked. "Give him an hour," I said. "Let him sit in the dark. Let him feel the cold steel of a gun against his head. Let him think he is going to die." "Otis, that is risky," Ray warned. "He needs to be broken, Ray," I said, my voice hard. "He needs to be shattered so he can be rebuilt. If I save him now, he learns nothing. He thinks Daddy will always be there to clean up his mess. He needs to know that sometimes Daddy isn't there." I hung up. I watched the clock. Tick. Tock. Each second was a lifetime of terror for my son. I imagined him in that warehouse tied to a chair begging for his life, realizing that his money, his status, his lies meant nothing in the face of real violence. I imagined him calling out for me and hearing only silence. It was the hardest hour of my life. Harder than the funeral. Harder than the betrayal. Because this time, I was the one holding the knife. 59 minutes passed. I picked up the phone again. "Go," I said to Ray. "Send them in." I stood up and walked to the window. The rain was still falling, washing the city clean. I had thrown my son into the fire. Now I had to see if he would burn or if he would be forged. The sirens wailed in the distance, a chorus of angels coming to save a sinner. I poured another drink. It was out of my hands now. The lesson was delivered. Now came the test. The silence of the warehouse district was shattered by the concussive boom of a flashbang grenade. It was a sound I knew well from my days in security, a sound that meant the end of negotiations and the beginning of consequences. I sat in the back of Ray's SUV, parked a safe distance away, watching the tactical team swarm the building like a colony of angry black ants. The night lit up with the strobe effect of muzzle flashes and tactical lights cutting through the rain. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I was the one who had given the order. I was the one who had told them to wait 59 minutes. Inside that warehouse, my son was facing the reality of the world he had tried to buy his way into. He was finding out that real criminals don't care about your credit score or your suits. They care about leverage. And for the last hour, Marcus had been the leverage. The raid was over in less than 10 minutes. The FBI moved with a precision that Tony's thugs couldn't match. I saw men being dragged out in handcuffs, men who had thought they were untouchable. And then I saw him. 2 agents walked him out. Marcus couldn't walk on his own. His legs were dragging his expensive shoes, scuffing the wet pavement. His face was a mask of blood and bruises. One eye was swollen shut and his lip was split. He was weeping openly, a broken, sobbing mess of a man. He looked around wildly, his good eye darting from shadow to shadow. He was looking for me. He was looking for his father to come running out with a blanket and a checkbook to make it all go away. But I stayed in the car. The tinted windows were my shield. I watched as they loaded him into an ambulance, not to take him to a private room, but to patch him up before they took him to a holding cell. He was safe from the cartel. But he wasn't safe from the law. And he certainly wasn't safe from the truth. "Follow them," I told Ray. To the precinct. The interrogation room at the federal building was a stark contrast to the chaotic violence of the warehouse. It was cold, sterile, and bright. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a headache-inducing hum. I stood in the observation room, hidden behind the one-way mirror. It was a place I had stood 1,000 times before, watching card cheats and embezzlers try to lie their way out of a corner. But I had never watched my own blood. Marcus sat at the metal table. He was wrapped in a gray blanket, holding a cup of lukewarm water with shaking hands. A medic had patched his face, but he still looked like a ruin. Across from him sat Agent Miller, the lead investigator. Miller was a patient man. He knew he didn't need to yell. He knew that Marcus was already broken. "You are in a lot of trouble, Marcus," Miller said, his voice calm and conversational. "We have you on money laundering. We have you on conspiracy with a known organized crime syndicate. Tony is talking. He says you were helping him move crypto through your brokerage accounts." "I didn't know," Marcus sobbed. "I swear I didn't know. He told me it was an investment group. I was just the broker. I was a victim. They kidnapped me. You saw them. They were going to kill me. They were going to kill you because you stole from them," Miller corrected. "You lost their money, Marcus. $2 million. That is not being a victim. That is being a thief." Marcus put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. He was looking for an angle. He was looking for a trade. He knew how the game was played. If you give them something bigger, they might let you slide on the smaller stuff. "I can give you names," Marcus stammered. "I can give you accounts. I can tell you how they move the money." "We already have that," Miller said, leaning back in his chair. "We have Tony's laptop. We don't need you for the cartel, Marcus. You are small fish. You are just a desperate guy who got in over his head. Unless what Marcus asked, looking up, hope flickering in his battered face. "Unless you can explain the other activity," Miller said, opening a file folder. "We found some interesting documents in your car. And your father, Mr. Jefferson. He provided us with some very disturbing recordings." Marcus froze. He looked at the mirror. He couldn't see me, but he sensed me. He knew I was the architect of his downfall. "My father," he whispered. "Is he here?" "He is safe," Miller said. "Which is more than I can say for you. We have recordings of you and your wife discussing a trip to Mexico. We have evidence of a fraudulent insurance policy. We have pills found in your home that match the toxicology of a sedative." Marcus started to hyperventilate. He realized that the money laundering was the least of his problems. Attempted murder was a charge that carried a life sentence. "It wasn't me," he cried, his voice rising to a shriek. "It was Vanessa. It was all Vanessa. She is the pharmacist. She got the pills. She came up with the plan." "So there was a plan?" Miller asked, leaning forward. "A plan to kill your father." Marcus broke. The dam held by his arrogance and his denial finally burst. He didn't confess out of guilt. He confessed out of self-preservation. He confessed because he thought if he blamed Vanessa enough, he might save his own skin. "Yes," he sobbed. "Yes, there was a plan, but I tried to stop it. I swear. She said we needed the money. She said he was old. She said he wouldn't feel anything. We were going to take him to Tijuana. There is a clinic, a hospice. You pay them cash and they take care of the rest." I stood in the darkness of the observation room and felt my heart turn to stone. Hearing it on a recording was one thing. Seeing my son, my flesh and blood, sitting in a police station bargaining with my life to save his own was a pain I cannot describe. It was a physical blow. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and crushed my lungs. "Go on," Miller said, his pen scratching on the pad. "We needed the insurance." Marcus continued, the words tumbling out of him in a rush of vomit and truth. "The policy paid double for accidental death abroad. Vanessa said we could make it look like he wandered off, like he got lost in the desert. We needed the money for Tony. I was scared. I didn't want to die. So you decided your father should die instead?" Miller asked, his voice cold. "I didn't have a choice," Marcus wailed. "You don't understand. They were going to cut off my fingers. They were going to kill me. My dad, he has lived a long life. He had a good life. I just needed a chance. A chance." He called murdering me a chance. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass. I closed my eyes. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. I remembered him falling and scraping his knee and me picking him up and telling him it would be okay. I remembered his graduation. I remembered the pride I felt when he got his first job. All of it was a lie. The boy I raised was gone. Or maybe he never existed. Maybe this weak, selfish creature was who he had always been, and I was just too blind with love to see it. Ray stood beside me. He didn't say anything. He just placed a hand on my shoulder, a silent gesture of solidarity. "Do you want to go in?" Ray asked softly. I opened my eyes. I looked at Marcus. He was wiping his nose on his sleeve, still babbling, still blaming Vanessa, still trying to negotiate a deal with the devil. "No," I whispered. "He is asking for you," Ray said. "He keeps looking at the door. He is looking for a savior," I said, my voice trembling. "He wants me to come in there and hire him a lawyer. He wants me to tell the nice policeman that it was all a misunderstanding. He wants me to be his father." "And aren't you?" Ray asked. "I was," I said. "I was his father for 40 years. I gave him everything. I gave him love. I gave him money. I gave him the benefit of the doubt." I watched Marcus take a sip of water, his hands shaking so hard he spilled it down his chin. But a father's job is to protect his family, I said, and that man in there, he tried to destroy this family. He tried to kill me, Ray, not in a fit of rage, not in self-defense, for money, for a policy. I stepped back from the glass. I don't have a son anymore, I said. I have a defendant. Tears streamed down my face, hot and stinging. I let them fall. I didn't wipe them away. I grieved. I grieved for the little boy who used to call me Daddy. I grieved for the future I thought we would have. I grieved for the legacy I wanted to leave him. But I did not open the door. Miller stood up in the interrogation room. "That is enough for now, Marcus," he said. "We have your statement. You are going to be booked on charges of conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud and money laundering, but I helped you," Marcus screamed, grabbing Miller's arm. "I told you about Vanessa. I told you about Tony. I made a deal." "There is no deal," Miller said, pulling away. "You confessed to planning the murder of your own father. There is no deal for that." Miller walked out. 2 officers came in and hauled Marcus to his feet. He was screaming my name now. "Dad, I know you are watching. Dad, help me. Dad, please." I watched them drag him out. I watched the door close. I watched the room go empty. I turned to Ray. "Let's go," I said. We walked out of the station into the pre-dawn light. The city was waking up. The world was moving on. I felt empty, hollowed out, but I also felt safe. The threat was gone. The cancer had been cut out. It hurt. God, it hurt. But I would survive. I got into the car. "Where to?" Ray asked. "To the airport," I said. "I have a flight to catch, not to Mexico, to Hawaii, to the place Betty and I loved. I needed to sit by the ocean. I needed to wash the stain of this night off my soul. I had saved my life. But I had lost my heart. And as we drove away, I realized that was the price of truth. It costs everything, but it is the only thing worth paying for. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old wood, a scent that usually commanded respect, but today it smelled like the end of a bloodline. I sat in the front row directly behind the prosecution table, my hands resting on the head of my cane. I wasn't wearing my old coat or my worn shoes. I was wearing a charcoal suit, the kind I used to wear when I fired people who stole from the casino. I was there to fire my son from my life. Marcus and Vanessa sat at separate defense tables. Their lawyers had filed motions to sever their cases, arguing that they couldn't get a fair trial if they were tried together. It was a desperate move, a rat-eat-rat strategy where each hoped to blame the other to save their own skin. Marcus looked hollowed out. His expensive haircut had grown out shaggy and unkempt, and the orange jumpsuit of the county jail washed out his complexion, making him look like a ghost. Vanessa looked worse. The arrogance that had defined her, the sneer she wore like makeup, was gone. She looked small, huddled in her chair, refusing to make eye contact with anyone, especially me. The trial had been swift. The evidence Ray and I had compiled was overwhelming. There were the bank records showing the embezzlement. There were the emails detailing the debt to the cartel. There was the brochure for the hospice in Mexico found in my trash can. And there was the recording, the audio file of them plotting my death in my own living room. The jury had listened to it in stunned silence, hearing my son and his wife discuss the best way to make my murder look like an accident. Now it was time for the victim impact statement. It was time for the father to speak. The bailiff called my name. I stood up. My knees popped, but I didn't wince. I walked to the witness stand, my cane clicking rhythmically on the parquet floor. I felt Marcus's eyes on me. I could feel the heat of his gaze burning into my back, pleading, begging, hoping for the old Otis, the one who always wrote the check. But that Otis was dead. He had died in the back of an ambulance. I took the oath. I sat down. I looked at the judge, a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many broken families. "Mr. Jefferson," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell the court how these events have affected you?" I looked at the jury. 12 strangers who held the fate of my family in their hands. Then I looked at Marcus. He was weeping silently, tears tracking through the stubble on his cheeks. I raised him to be a good man. I began, my voice low and steady, filling the silent room. I taught him to fish. I taught him to ride a bike. When his mother died, I held him while he cried. I thought I had raised a son who would carry my name with honor. I paused, taking a breath that rattled slightly in my chest. I was wrong. I didn't raise a son. I raised a parasite. Vanessa's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Overruled, the judge said sharply. Proceed, Mr. Jefferson. I looked at Vanessa. She was trembling. I gave them everything, I continued. I paid for their house. I paid for their cars. I paid off his gambling debts in the middle of the night so he wouldn't lose his legs. I hid my wealth not to deceive them but to protect them from their own greed. I wanted them to build their own lives. But they didn't want to build. They wanted to take. I gripped the railing of the witness stand. They put me in a garage, I said, my voice rising. On Thanksgiving, they fed me scraps while they ate my food. They treated me like a dog. And when that wasn't enough, when they realized I was worth more dead than alive, they decided to harvest me. I looked at Marcus. He had his head in his hands. He was going to ship me to a foreign country, I said. To a place with no phone and no hope. He was going to erase me. And when that failed, he was going to leave me in the snow to freeze. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the ventilation system. I loved him. I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I loved him more than my own life. But he wanted my life. He wanted to trade my breath for an insurance payout. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I am not here to ask for mercy. Mercy is what got us here. Mercy is the check I wrote that taught him there were no consequences. Mercy is the safety net that stopped him from hitting the bottom. I stood up. I didn't need the cane. I stood on my own 2 feet. I am here to ask for justice, I said. I am here to ask you to do what I failed to do. I am asking you to teach him the one lesson I couldn't. I looked directly at Marcus. Responsibility, I said. Marcus sobbed a loud, ugly sound. Dad, please. I sat back down. The prosecutor nodded. No further questions. I walked back to my seat. I didn't look at Marcus again. I stared straight ahead at the seal of the court on the wall. Justice. It was a cold concept, but it was the only thing I had left. The judge took a recess to deliberate on sentencing. The jury had already returned a guilty verdict on all counts. Now it was just a matter of how long. We waited. The minutes ticked by like hours. Ray sat next to me, silent and supportive. He knew what this was costing me. He knew that every year the judge gave them was a year taken off my heart. The judge returned. The bailiff called the room to order. Stand, the judge commanded. Marcus and Vanessa stood. They looked like children waiting for the principal's belt. Mr. Stanton, the judge, said, her voice echoing from the bench. You have been found guilty of fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and conspiracy to cause bodily harm. You betrayed the most fundamental trust that exists between a parent and a child. You viewed your father not as a human being but as a commodity. Marcus was shaking so hard his shackles rattled. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 8 years in a federal correctional facility, the judge declared. You will also be required to pay restitution to the victim in the amount of the debt you incurred in his name. 8 years. Marcus's knees buckled. His lawyer had to hold him up. 8 years. He would be almost 50 when he got out. His youth, his prime, his opportunities all gone, wasted on a gamble he lost. The judge turned to Vanessa. Mrs. Stanton, you have been found guilty of unauthorized practice of medicine, conspiracy to commit murder in the 2nd degree, and fraud. You used your knowledge as a pharmacist to construct a weapon to use against a vulnerable elderly man. You were the architect of the medical deception. Vanessa looked up, her eyes wide and dry. She was in shock. You are sentenced to 5 years in a state penitentiary, the judge said, and your medical license is hereby permanently revoked. 5 years. Vanessa didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at the wall. Her life as she knew it was over. No more designer clothes, no more parties, no more status, just a cage. Take them away, the judge ordered. The bailiffs moved in. They grabbed Marcus first. He turned to me. He twisted in their grip, his face a mask of pure agony. Dad, he screamed. Dad, help me. Don't let them take me. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I watched him. I saw the terror in his eyes. It was the same terror I had felt in the garage, the same terror I had felt in the woods. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched. Dad, Marcus wailed as they dragged him through the side door. Dad. The door slammed shut. Vanessa was next. She didn't look at me. She walked like a zombie, her eyes fixed on the floor. She knew there was no point in begging. She knew I had seen her soul and found it wanting. The courtroom cleared out. The spectators left whispering about the tragedy. The lawyers packed their briefcases. I sat there for a moment longer. I felt heavy. It wasn't the weight of the coat or the cane. It was the weight of the verdict. I had won. I had survived. But I had lost. Ray put a hand on my shoulder. "It is done, Otis," he said. "Yes," I said. "It is done." We walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining, but it offered no warmth. The wind bit at my face. I stood on the steps and looked at the city. Somewhere in that concrete maze, my son was being processed. He was being stripped of his name and given a number. He was trading his suit for a jumpsuit. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I deleted Marcus's contact. I deleted Vanessa's contact. I walked down the steps to the waiting car. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The airport," I said. I wasn't going home. I didn't have a home anymore. The mansion was tainted. The memories were poisoned. I was going to sell it all. I was going to Hawaii. Betty and I had always talked about going. We had brochures in the drawer for 20 years. We never went because Marcus needed tuition, or Marcus needed a car, or Marcus needed a bailout. Well, Marcus didn't need anything anymore. He had 3 meals a day and a roof over his head for the next 8 years. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. I pictured Betty. I wondered if she would forgive me. I wondered if she would understand why I had to throw her son to the wolves. "He wasn't a son anymore, Betty," I whispered to the empty car. "He was a wolf, and you have to protect the sheep." The car merged onto the highway, heading away from the jail, heading away from the past. I was 76 years old. I was alone, but I was alive. And for the first time in a long time, I was safe. The bell above the door of the small coffee shop jingled softly, a sound that felt like a gentle greeting compared to the cacophony of sirens and screams that had filled my life for the past 2 weeks. I sat at a corner table, my back to the wall, a habit I couldn't quite shake even now that the immediate danger had passed. I watched the door, waiting. I had asked Sarah to meet me here, a neutral ground away from airports and hospitals and police stations. When she walked in, she looked different without her flight attendant uniform. She was wearing jeans and a thick sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, softer, but her eyes were the same. Kind, observant, and carrying a weight of worry that a woman her age shouldn't have to bear. She scanned the room, her gaze landing on me. A smile broke across her face, tentative but genuine. "Mr. Jefferson," she said, walking over. "I wasn't sure if you would come." I stood up. My legs were strong again, my back straight. I wasn't the frail old man she had saved on the plane. I was Otis Jefferson. I always keep my appointments. "Sarah," I said, extending a hand. She took it. Her grip was warm. "Please sit," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I have in years," I said. "Thanks to you." We sat down. A waitress came over and took our order. Coffee, black for me, herbal tea for Sarah. When she left, I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a small white envelope. It felt light, but I knew the weight of what was inside. "I have something for you," I said, sliding it across the table. Sarah looked at the envelope, then at me, her brow furrowed. "What is this?" "Open it," I said. She picked it up. She opened the flap and pulled out the check. Her eyes widened. She gasped, a sharp intake of breath that drew glances from the nearby tables. She stared at the number. $500,000. "Mr. Jefferson," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. I can't accept this. This is $500,000. It is a fraction of what my life is worth," I said, my voice steady. "And it is a fraction of what you saved. If I had gone to Mexico, Sarah, I would be dead. My son would be rich, and justice would be a word in a dictionary, not a reality in a courtroom." She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't do it for money. I did it because it was right. Because my dad told me stories about you, about how you helped people. I couldn't let them hurt you." "I know," I said, leaning forward. "That is exactly why you deserve it. You were the only person on that plane who saw a human being. Everyone else saw a burden or a paycheck. You saw Otis." "Oosh." I pointed to the check. "Take it," I said. "Pay off your student loans. Buy a house. Travel. Do whatever you want. It is yours." She looked at the check again. Her hands were trembling. I don't know what to say." Say yes, I said, smiling. She wiped her eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. But that is not all, I continued. She looked up surprised. There is more. I did some research, Sarah, I said. I know you have been volunteering at the senior center on weekends. I know you want to get your master's in social work. I know you have a dream of opening a facility, a real facility, not a warehouse for the dying, but a home for the living. Her jaw dropped. How did you... I used to be head of security, I reminded her with a wink. I know how to find things out. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. I have a lot of free time now, I said, and I have a lot of empty rooms in my heart. My wife is gone. My son is away. I have resources, Sarah, and I have experience. I know how to build things. I know how to protect things. I paused, letting the offer hang in the air. I want to help you build it, I said. Your center, the Sarah and Mike Haven, or whatever you want to call it. I will fund it. I will handle the logistics. You handle the care. You want to be partners, she asked, her voice filled with wonder. I want to be family, I said softly, not by blood. Blood has disappointed me. I want to be family by choice, by loyalty, by shared values. I looked at her. I saw the daughter I should have had. I saw the spirit of my friend Mike. What do you say? I asked. Sarah didn't speak. She reached across the table and took my hand. She squeezed it hard. I say yes, she whispered. I say yes to everything. We sat there for a long time, drinking our coffee and tea, planning the future. We talked about location, about staff, about the color of the walls. We talked about dignity and respect. We talked about creating a place where no one would ever feel like a burden. For the first time in a year, I didn't feel alone. I felt connected. I felt useful. I had lost a son, but I had found a daughter. And as we walked out of the coffee shop into the crisp autumn air, I knew that this was the real victory. Not the money, not the revenge. It was the connection. It was the legacy. It was the knowledge that when I finally did close my eyes for the last time, I wouldn't be alone in a Mexican basement. I would be surrounded by people who knew my name, and that was worth more than $5 million. The county jail visitation room smelled of industrial cleaner and stale despair. It was a cold, sterile place designed to strip away hope. I sat on the hard metal stool, my hands resting on the cold steel counter. I wasn't wearing a suit today. I was wearing a simple cardigan and slacks. I looked like a grandfather who had come to visit a wayward grandson, but the steel in my spine was as rigid as ever. The heavy door on the other side of the glass buzzed open. Marcus shuffled in. He looked terrible. The orange jumpsuit hung off his frame. His head was shaved, revealing the shape of his skull, making him look vulnerable and young. His eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten well. He looked like a man who was being consumed from the inside out by regret. He sat down opposite me. He picked up the phone. His hand was shaking. "Dad," he whispered. His voice was a ghost of the arrogant tone he used to use. I picked up my receiver. "Hello, Marcus." He started to cry. It wasn't the loud sobbing of the courtroom. It was a quiet, broken weeping. He leaned his forehead against the glass, his shoulders heaving. "I am so sorry, Dad," he choked out. "I am so sorry. Please forgive me." I don't know what I was thinking. I was crazy. I was scared. I listened to him. I let him cry. I let him pour out his shame. "I know, son," I said softly. "I know you were scared. Fear makes people do terrible things. But I hurt you," he said, looking up, his eyes red and raw. "I tried to hurt you. I tried to kill you, Dad. How can you even look at me?" I looked at him. I looked past the jumpsuit, past the shaved head, past the crimes. I looked for the boy I had raised. I looked for the son who used to ask me to read him bedtime stories. "I look at you, Marcus, because you are my son," I said. And a father never stops looking at his son, even when he is lost. He sobbed harder. "I don't deserve it. I don't deserve you." "No," I agreed. "You don't. Not right now. You broke the covenant, Marcus. You broke the bond." I leaned closer to the glass. "I am not angry because you wanted money," I said, my voice steady. "Money is a powerful drug. I have seen better men than you fall for it. I am not angry because you lied. Lies are easy when you are desperate. Then why, he asked. Why are you here? I am angry, I said, because you let a stranger into our house. You let a woman who didn't love you, a woman who only loved what you could give her, whisper poison in your ear. You let her turn you against your own blood. You let her convince you that your father was a burden, that your father was disposable. Marcus flinched. He knew it was true. He knew he had been weak. She told me she loved me, he whispered. She told me we were doing it for our future. She was doing it for her future, I said. You were just the tool. And when the tool broke, she threw it away. I watched the realization wash over him again, the pain of Vanessa's betrayal fresh and sharp. You have 8 years, Marcus, I said. 8 years in a cage. I know, he said. It is forever. It is not forever, I corrected him. It is a pause. It is a time out. It is time for you to think. Think about what he asked. Think about who you are, I said. Think about what matters. Think about the words honor and loyalty. Think about family. Not the family you buy, the family you are born with, the family that stands by you even when you fail. I reached into my bag. I pulled out 2 items. I slid them through the metal slot at the bottom of the glass. The first was a small leather-bound Bible. It was old, worn at the edges. It had been my father's. The second was a photograph. It was a picture taken 20 years ago. It was me, Betty, and Marcus on a fishing trip. We were all smiling. Marcus was holding up a trout, his face beaming with pride. Betty was laughing, her hand on his shoulder. I was looking at them both with love. Take these, I said. Marcus picked them up. He touched the photo, his fingers tracing his mother's face. Mom, he whispered. She loved you, Marcus, I said. She loved you more than anything, and she would be heartbroken to see you here. But she would also want you to survive. She would want you to find your way back. He looked at me. Will you come back? I stood up. I buttoned my cardigan. I don't know, Marcus, I said honestly. I don't know if I can. The wound is deep, son. It is very deep. Please, Dad, he begged. Don't leave me alone. You are not alone, I said, pointing to the Bible. You have him, and you have the memory of us. I turned to leave. Dad, wait, he called out. I stopped. I looked back. I love you, he said. I looked at him one last time. I saw the pain. I saw the regret. But I also saw the consequences. I know, I said. I hung up the phone. I walked out of the room. I walked out of the jail. I didn't promise to return. I couldn't. Trust once broken is like a mirror. You can glue it back together, but you can still see the cracks. And sometimes the reflection is too painful to look at. I got into my car. Ray was waiting. How was it, he asked. It was hard, I said. We drove away. I had done what I could. I had saved his life. I had given him a chance at redemption. Now it was up to him. I closed my eyes and let the motion of the car soothe me. 8 years. Maybe in 8 years the cracks would heal. Maybe in 8 years I would be ready to forgive. But for now I had a plane to catch and a new life to live. The for sale sign on the front lawn of the mansion leaned slightly in the wind, a red and white symbol of the end of an era. I sat in the back of the town car watching the movers load the last of the furniture into the truck. They weren't taking my things. They were taking the staging furniture, the empty props that had filled a house devoid of love. My personal items, the few that mattered, Betty's photo albums, my old service revolver, a box of letters were already safely stored in a climate-controlled unit. The rest of it, the expensive sofas, the crystal chandeliers, the trappings of a life I had built for a family that didn't exist, I left behind. I had sold the house for $3 million. It was a quick sale below market value to a young couple who didn't know its history. I didn't care about the profit. I cared about the purge. The money from the sale, along with the liquidated assets I had seized from Marcus, went into a new trust, the Betty Jefferson Scholarship Fund. It would pay for the education of children who had the grades but not the means, children who understood the value of $1 because they had never had one. Ray stood by the car door holding a thick envelope. "It is done, Otis," he said, handing it to me through the open window. "The paperwork for the foundation is filed. Sarah is listed as the executive director. She starts Monday." "Good," I said, taking the envelope. "She will do a good job. She has heart." "And the rest?" Ray asked, nodding toward the house. The rest is just brick and mortar, I said. Let the new owners fill it with whatever they want. I am done with it. Ray looked at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. You look different, Otis. Lighter. I feel lighter, I admitted. I spent 40 years carrying that boy. I didn't realize how heavy he was until I put him down. Ray extended a hand. Take care of yourself in Hawaii. Don't drink too many Mai Tais. I plan to drink exactly enough, I said, shaking his hand. Thank you, Ray. For everything. You saved my life. You saved yourself, Otis, Ray said. I just drove the car. The town car pulled away, leaving the mansion and the memories behind. We drove to the airport, but this time there was no ambulance waiting, no frantic son checking his watch. I walked through the terminal with my head high, my cane tapping a steady rhythm on the floor. I wasn't the confused old man anymore. I was Otis Jefferson, passenger in seat 1A. I boarded the plane, first class. I didn't need a private jet. I didn't need the isolation. I wanted to be around people, regular people who were going on vacation or traveling for work. I wanted to hear the hum of life. I settled into my seat. The flight attendant, a young man with a bright smile, offered me a glass of champagne. Celebrating something special today, sir? He asked. I looked at the bubbles rising in the glass. Yes, I said. I am celebrating a retirement. From work. From worry, I said. And from the past. The plane took off, banking over the city. I looked down at the grid of streets, the sprawling suburbs, the concrete jungle where I had fought my battles. Somewhere down there in a federal prison, Marcus was sitting in a cell. I wondered if he was thinking about me. I wondered if he was angry or sad or just empty. I realized I didn't care. The apathy was a gift. It was the final stage of healing. I had spent so much energy trying to fix him, trying to save him, trying to love him enough for both of us. Now I had that energy back. I pulled the photo of Betty from my wallet. It was worn at the edges, a picture of us on our honeymoon in Atlantic City. We were young, poor, and happy. We had talked about Hawaii every year for 40 years. Next year, we would say. When Marcus finishes school. When the house is paid off. When I retire. We made it, Betty, I whispered to the photo. I am going. The flight was long and peaceful. I slept without dreaming. When I woke up, the captain was announcing our descent into Honolulu. I looked out the window. The ocean stretched out below, vast and blue, endless and clean. I walked off the plane and felt the warm tropical air hit my face. It smelled of flowers and salt. It smelled like a promise kept. I took a taxi to the hotel. It wasn't a resort. It was a quiet bungalow on the beach, far away from the tourists and the noise. I unpacked my small suitcase. I put Betty's picture on the nightstand. Then I walked out onto the sand. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I took off my shoes and let the water wash over my feet. It was warm. I stood there, an old man alone on a beach, thousands of miles from the life I had known. I had no wife. I had no son. I had no home. But I had peace. I had survived the betrayal of my own blood. I had looked into the face of greed and stared it down. I had cut out the rot to save the tree. Blood is sacred, they say. But when that blood turns toxic, you have to apply a tourniquet to save the rest of the body. Sometimes loneliness is the cheapest price you pay for peace. I watched the sun dip below the horizon. Aloha, Otis, I said to myself, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. We spend our lives building safeguards for our children, savings accounts, insurance homes, hoping to protect them from the world's harshness. But we often forget to protect ourselves from the very children we raised. My son viewed my aging not as a twilight to be honored, but as a transaction to be expedited. I didn't survive because I was lucky. I survived because I remembered that before I was a father, I was a fighter. Trust is precious, but verifying that trust is survival. Never let love blind you to the knife in your back, even if the hand holding it shares your blood. What would you have done in my place? Would you have visited him in prison? Would you have forgiven him? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of survival and justice, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories to tell, and the truth is always stranger than fiction. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your guard up.